Well, hello and welcome into Off the Bench here on a Tuesday, middle of December, beginning of December. Reed Mouse here on Off the Bench. Stone Shields to my left. We have a good show for you today. Yesterday we talked a lot about the Bengals. Today we're not going to have any guests on. We'll have some guests later on this week, but we're really going to hone in on some other things that happened over the weekend, and I felt it wasn't necessary to give them any time yesterday, but we're kind of deliberately putting it to a show today, and that is, of course, what happened Friday night here in the Queen City, the crosstown shootout. I know we're a couple days away from that, but there's a lot of takeaways from that. A lot to take away, on both sides, both Xavier and UC. We're going to talk about, I know I get a bad rep because I constantly blast college football because I admittedly not the biggest fan, and every time someone tells me, like, this is going to be great, I watch, and then I'm like, it wasn't that great. But there's some things that have happened in the college football playoff, obviously Notre Dame being out, and I got to admit, and I'll get to this later, I have to admit here on the tease of the show, at Kirk Cignetti, I've not been this enamored with a college football coach in maybe my entire life. Like, I am absolutely amazed at what he's been able to do at what was historically the worst college football program in the country and had been that way for over 100 years, and what he's been able to do in the first 2 years while making a lot of enemies along the way, while having so much bravado and getting laughed at. And here he is. He's turned them into what I believe to be a legitimate power, at least this season. So we'll get into all of that later. Stone, my main man.
What's up, Reader?
Thank you so much for being here. And we have a few more days left of the promotion. The promotion that we have for our T-shirts. So I wanted to get a pub there to start off this show. And what's the promotion once again?
Yeah, chatterboxsports.com/store. We got a little T-shirt sale going on over there. Chatterbox Reds, Chatterbox Bengals, Chatterbox Bearcats. By the way, new Chatterbox Reds podcast is out. The boys went live last night, day one of winter meetings. The Kyle Schwarber rumors are very much swirling around here at this point. Lots of people nationally and locally. There might be a chance he comes home to Cincinnati, so check out that podcast if you haven't done so already. But the T-shirts, 2 for $40. You got to use code DOUBLE, DOUBLE, get you some Chatterbox Sports swag. Perfect this time of the year. Christmas around the corner, holiday season. You want to get a gift for your family or yourself, you can do that. Lots of cool T-shirts up there. chatterboxsports.com/store.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the beard today? Because I'm losing. You said it looked better. You said it looked better on Sunday than it did on Friday. I don't like it at all. My wife.
You don't like it at all?
My wife loves it for some reason. So
she does?
Oh yeah, she's a big fan. She's a big fan of it. But give me a grade 1 to 10 on how the beard's looking today on a Tuesday.
Yeah,
and you can be honest. You can be honest.
Yeah, no, I think it's probably taken a slight step back since Sunday, but I do think we talk about the awkward stage, right? I think we're kind of in the awkward stage a little bit. We'll kind of reevaluate this later in the week, like on Friday, but it's definitely, it's close to an 8. It's approaching an 8 right now.
Oh, wow.
But it's got a high ceiling. And, the floor's a lot higher than I anticipated as well.
Okay, well, thank you. Yeah. I appreciate that. There was comments in the chat already about our Black Friday deal, which has spanned into December 10th, the second week of December. I'll tell this story. I think I've told this story maybe on this show before. Obviously, we're here in Hamilton, Ohio. If you're here of Southwest Ohio, you know the different places you can shop in the area, one of them being the outlet malls up in Monroe. I went there a few weeks ago with my wife. And every time I've ever walked into multiple stores at the outlet store, they're always doing a 50% bargain, like 50% off today only or this weekend only. And it's been that way since they opened 15 years ago. Every time you go there, it's 50% off, even especially double this time of year when it's Christmas and they're trying to get people through the doors and everything like that. And I started doing this bit with my wife as we're going from shop to shop where – every time, and I hate shopping, so I was just trying to make it fun for myself. Every time we'd walk into a store, I'd go, oh my gosh, 50% off again? Well, honey, it's our lucky day. I can't believe 50% off everything. And I did that literally from J. Crew to the Gap to the Nike store to Under Armour, every single place I walked in. Like 40% off here? Are you kidding me? It is our lucky day. We are blessed today, honey. I highly suggest doing that to your wife or significant other if you're shopping up there at the outlet malls this holiday season, because she wanted to kill me by the end of it all. But it was fun. It was fun for me. Added a little spice for something that I absolutely loathe doing. One thing that I love doing is talking about a Xavier win over the University of Cincinnati. Obviously, I'm a Xavier fan. But this game, we had a few guests on. We had Rick Broering. We had Kenny Freeze. We had Houdini from Chatterbox Bearcats on last week. And one thing that I continually asked them was what has changed in the weeks leading up to the college or the crosstown shootout that made it to the point where Xavier was going to be at one point a 2-point favorite over UC at home against Cintas, which would have blown everyone's mind if I told you that on November 10th when Xavier lost by 20 points to Santa Clara and followed that up with a big loss up there in Iowa. And Dayton, or UC, had come off wins against Dayton, had played well, and several times obviously had that big exhibition win. I think it was a win over Michigan early on before the season started. And things had changed. You looked at that college crosstown shootout, and the talk had been all week. If Xavier's going to win, they're going to have to shoot lights out because they're going to chuck up a lot of threes, even though we know UC chucked up a lot of threes too. And what happened? Xavier did chuck up a lot of threes. They chucked up exactly 28 of them. And people are saying, well, if they're going to win, they're going to have to hit 40, 50%, hit 13 threes. They hit 6. 6 of 28 from 3. Oh, but Xavier, every time they beat UC, they always don't miss a single free throw. Well, how did Xavier shoot in the crosstown shootout from the charity stripe? 13 of 23, 57%. Not exactly a high mark. Oh, well, Xavier just plays a sound game of basketball more often than not. More so than UC. Well, one sound way is not letting second chances for your opponent. And what happened? UC crashed the boards hard. They had 15 offensive rebounds to Xavier's 5. In fact, they had a myriad. They scored on second chance points throughout the game. And what was the conclusion? If I had told you all at 7 p.m. on Friday that Xavier was going to shoot 6 of 28 from 3, 11 from 23 or whatever it was, 13 of 23 from the charity stripe, and allow 15 offensive rebounds for the Bearcats, you would have said, and rightfully so, that the Bearcats blew them out on Cintas's home floor, on Xavier's home floor. But that's not what happened. Xavier wins 79-74 in the first year of Richard Pitino, with a roster that in terms of NIL collective is rumored to be spent half the money that UC has spent. I made this joke. I'm not going to do it here live on air because I don't know ball that much. But if you rank the top 10 best basketball players, the top 10 best athletes on the floor on Friday night, likely 7 of them would be from UC. UC has a talented roster. Xavier does not. Xavier is looking for the future. They realize that everything that happened with Sean Miller, bringing in Richard Pitino behind the 8 ball, you know what? This is going to be a rebuilding year and a building blocks year. And still, Xavier got it done on Friday night, despite everything going against them. Didn't make any threes, weren't good from the free throw line, didn't crash the boards. And, of course, it was because they had a hero, as they often do. Trey Carroll, 30 points, his long locks flowing, saying all the right things in the postgame. He said, hey, this is my one chance to beat UC, and I beat them. wound up, what was the final stat line there for Trey Carroll? 30 points, 14 of 23, pretty much did it all. He was 1 from 6 from the free throw line and 1 from 5 from 3. And I can't shake anything. You want the takeaway? You want what I was feeling after watching that game? It wasn't, oh, this Xavier team is much better than we expected. No, I still think when seasons end, this team will be floating at best around 500. At best in the middle of the Big East, which is down this year. I don't think they're going to be talking about this team going to make a surprise run at the tournament. No. That wasn't the takeaway. The takeaway was that in a city that features such esteemed coaches as Scott Satterfield and Zach Taylor, that Wes Miller might be the worst coach in the city. We've now been seeing it for 5 years. This UC, this Cincinnati Bearcats program, which is nationally renowned. You ask college basketball fans about UC, and they'll tell you the glory days of the 90s and even the Mick Cronin era where this team was consistently in the tournament, consistently a high seed. And here we are in year 5 of Wes Miller with potentially his best roster thus far. And yeah, going into Cintas Center is a tough thing. But you lose by 5 points to a Xavier team that, quite frankly, isn't very good. And where these aspirations, we set a benchmark for Wes Miller this year is they got to get in the tournament and probably even win a game. And now you're looking at it like, what is this team's outlook going forward? They can still do all that. They still can. I mean, they play in the Big 12. They can get big wins, quad 1, quad 2, make a name for themselves. It's going to take a lot of upsets. But I don't think it's an outlandish take when you say what Wes Miller has. There's no one that's done less with more in this town than Wes Miller. Every year, we are led to believe that this team is uber talented, that Wes Miller has done another great job in the transfer portal, in the recruiting field, and he has. But when it comes to actually playing the game of basketball, it's pretty clear this team ain't up to snuff. It's pretty clear this team offensively is tone deaf. The post-game quote where they asked, why didn't you double-team Trey down in the post? Oh, we hadn't worked on it. Well, why? 1, how do you not work on that? And 2, just install it. Just do it. That's what good coaches do. They coach on the fly. 79-74, Xavier takes this one. Stone, as the diehard UC fan that you are, I know you talked about it a little bit on your show yesterday. But what was your big takeaway from this one? Because as I mentioned, the talk all week was Xavier's gonna shoot a lot. And they did. They shot 28 threes. They hit 6 of them. And if I would have told you before the game that Xavier's going to go 6 of 28 from 3, you would have said, well, that sounds like a blowout for the UC Bearcats. What was your takeaway from this one?
Bad coaching, or coaching mismatch, I should say. If you're a UC fan, you got to be worried about Pitino sticking around for a while because he's going to win several of these matchups because clearly the coaching advantage for now goes to Xavier. And also, why did UC want to get into that kind of a game, particularly early on? Is it always felt like, UC was playing from behind in this one, and their biggest advantage in this game was to get the ball into the post with Mustafa Cham and use some of that size and potentially get some easy baskets at the rim. And they weren't able to do that. And, sometimes they threw it into Cham, and he kind of showed some soft tendencies. He was falling all over the place. Spur was texting our chat like, this guy's so big, and he just keeps falling over all the time. So that didn't really make much sense to me. He has the ability to be a tougher physical guy. He didn't show that in the game in the crosstown shootout. And also, UC loves falling in love with the 3-ball, but they're not good at it at all. And It wasn't going in. And if you wanted to get in a 3-point shooting contest with Xavier, I mean, you were just digging your own grave at that point. And to your point, Xavier didn't even shoot the three ball particularly well, and they still were able to win the game. And it didn't look like UC was running much offense. They would just kind of take it down the floor, swing it around the perimeter a little bit. Oh, no, the shot clock's at 5. We had to chuck up a bad shot, and that's what they did. And no adjustments either from Wes Miller, right? This Trey Carroll guy, you knew he probably was going to be their best player, and he had to kind of go off in order to win this game for Xavier. You didn't think about throwing a second guy on him. And Wes said after the game, oh, we didn't really practice double-teaming guys in the post. 1, why the heck haven't you practiced that? And 2, I don't care. Throw a guy on him anyway. He's killing you for 30 points. So I thought it was a complete coaching mismatch. Thought the plan was horrible from UC as well, and more of the same as Xavier continues to dominate this rivalry.
Yeah, and another thing that just to show the improbability of what Xavier did on Friday night at home. We mentioned the three-point shooting, the free throw shooting. We mentioned the offensive boards. Xavier, at one point, was dominating this game at a 13-point lead. And what happens? Did they coast all the way to the end? No. UC stormed all the way back, took a lead in the winding minutes of the game. And still, despite losing a 13-point lead, Xavier still winds up on top. It is absolutely amazing that is even possible. It truly is. And like I said, I don't have high aspirations as a Xavier fan for the team this year. I don't think that anyone really does. They kind of circled one game, and they said, if you want this to be a successful season, you've got to win this one game in the first week of December at the Cintas Center, and they did exactly that. Anything extra is gravy. I mean, obviously, you can't be losing to DePaul twice, and you can't be at the bottom of the Big East. But they've already exceeded where the thought was this team was going to be this year. And it just continues to show what I've heard from UC fans now for a few years, and what has become so abundantly clear, and is that Wes Miller is unable to coach a team to live up to their level of talent. Take, once again, Xavier this year. What did Richard Pitino do? Started playing more small ball, having more guards on the floor, going to shoot more. That wasn't the way that they wanted to play at the beginning of the year, but that's what the team gave them, so that's what you learn. And you've seen this with great coaching before. It's not what do you want to do, it's what the team is able to do. And what a Wes Miller coach team has been able to do, I'm not sure. Because it's not play great offense, even though every year he says, we're going to play fast, we're going to go up and down the floor. Now, they are a pretty good defensive team. And the stats that I showed you, other than letting Trey Carroll take over that game, holding Xavier, that isn't a great three-pointing shooting team, but they shoot a lot, holding them to 6 of 28. What was the defensive efficiency? One of the top in the league, in the country. So there's a lot of questions. And outside of a miracle run in the Big 12 this year, I saw someone put in the chat they're expected by Bart Torvik to win 6 games in the Big 12. Outside of, beating Houston and Kansas and having miraculous run in the Big 12 and making the tournament, I just don't know how it continues with Wes. It's not year 1 or 2, it's year 5. He's now lost to, I think, 3 different Xavier head coaches. Travis Steele, Sean Miller have gone on, and now the first year of Richard Pitino. And more often than not have had a better roster than Xavier. In a town, in college sports, obviously rivalries are king. And when you don't win the rivalry, even though you play 30 games throughout the year, when you don't win the rivalry, it's pretty telling. It's pretty telling. First chance, it was their chance to go back-to-back for the first time since 1995, 30 years. Unable to do it despite having the superior roster, despite having a coach that had been around the program for 5 years now, had more experience there. And despite coming off a win last year, think you'd have the momentum going your way. But Xavier wins 79-74. All right, we went live yesterday. News had come out about the Bengals, and we mentioned this, and we broke this down. Me and Craig Sandlin did for 45, 50 minutes. The news that had been questioned because after not dressing all season long, Jermaine Burton, and then getting suspended and not traveling with the team, you're wondering, rightfully so, why the heck don't the Bengals just release him? Why don't they just, cut the cord, cut ties with Jermaine Burton, former third-round pick, 80th overall pick, someone who was deemed as a replacement for T. Higgins, or if they were going to go that route, or at least be a deep downfield threat with some highlights. And what did we see out of the Jermaine Burton career? 4 catches, 107 yards. And I don't think it's from a lack of an organization thing. And I will blast the Bengals organization, and you can blast them for the pick. But bringing in a red flag, and it's not a dim flag. It was a bright neon red flag guy like Jermaine Burton. They made efforts to make it work. Bringing in TJ Houshmandzadeh, Chad Johnson, Jermaine Burton, T. Higgins, taking him under his wing, or at least attempting to. Andre Yoshivas has had quotes about Jermaine Burton. And you heard it in Zach Taylor's comments about this situation, where he said that very much. There was an effort there to make this work. But sometimes things just don't work. You can take a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. And that's what it felt like this Cincinnati team did. A guy that has almost as much talent as anyone in the league, Jermaine Burton, that everyone knew was a first-round talent that you were getting on a discount in the 3rd round. A guy that his college coach wasn't able to vouch for him. He's had trouble along the way, 3 different high schools, 2 different colleges. And he comes into Cincinnati. It felt like a perfect situation for the Bengals. With Joe Burrow, he wasn't going to be asked to be the number 1 guy because you have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. This is a passing offense, so you can learn. Somewhere that truly felt like a great fit for Jermaine Burton, and it just didn't work out. It was tired. It was done. But there's not much else you can say. They took a chance, and they're taking a lot of chances, but I think almost everyone was okay with this chance because you saw the ceiling. You saw what he was able to do, or at least believed what he's able to do based off his college, based off his athleticism, based off of what pretty much every scout said about him as an athlete, which is he has the capability to be a true number 1 guy in this league. Be a 1,000-yard receiver, multiple 10-touchdown guy. And you break him into the Bengals offense. But from the beginning to the late night, him getting evicted out of his apartment, to him going to the casino late night after, I think he wasn't dressing that game, to all the stories that we continue to hear from Jermaine. The time was up. All you can ask for a guy is to mature. You've got a lot more free time on your own when you are a professional as opposed to when you're a college athlete. And Jermaine Burton, it appears, wasn't mature enough to take up the task. Stone, I talked with Craig a lot yesterday, and I know we talked about this at Smoke Justice on Sunday. What was your takeaway from just kind of this whole thing? And this fallout was inevitable. This waving of Jermaine Burton, releasing Jermaine Burton was inevitable. What was your takeaway from this fallout?
Yeah, I mean, look, the Bengals have done stuff like this in the past. We all remember the Marvin Lewis era. They've made some risky selections, and sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. And clearly this was a very risky selection. He gets taken in the 3rd round. I don't think it was a surprise to anybody around the NFL that he continued to slide. I think you could have even argued that he had first-round talent. The Bengals thought they got a steal, and typical Bengal fashion here over the past few years, they swung and they completely missed on Jermaine Burton, and it feels like one of the worst draft picks in the history of the franchise. There really isn't many names that are popping to mind that are worse than him. When you look at his time here in Cincinnati this year, he hasn't been active for a single game. And it was reported that, he's been doing better this year. And as you mentioned, Houshmandzadeh was helping him out. T. Higgins took him under his wing a little bit. Well, it clearly didn't work because they still didn't trust him to go out there on the football field. And it was a complete disaster. And, that video of Zach Taylor when they picked him is kind of going viral again right now, because it seems like that was a Zach Taylor pick because we don't really see him show that much emotion. And he was pretty fired up to have Jermaine Burton, but really couldn't have gone any worse. I think it helps that you brought T. Higgins back because, as you alluded to, I think that was kind of part of the intent with the pick was that he could potentially be a T. Higgins replacement. You ended up holding on to T. Higgins after he finished the year so well last year. But, yeah, just a complete disaster for Jermaine Burton. He had, it was reported in the preseason last year that he was falling asleep during meetings. And he missed a walkthrough. That caused him to miss a game. And then, he had the eviction that caused him to miss another game. And then this suspension was kind of the final straw for Cincinnati, and they move off him. What a disaster.
Yeah, it's it is a disaster. One of the worst picks in franchise history. But I will admit that it's one that it was easy to get excited about because of the talent, because of the fit. I mentioned this to Craig yesterday. It seems like the Bengals more often than not are trying to hit home runs. They're trying to take these uber athletic guys that maybe don't have a whole lot of production in college, but you can see where their ceiling can be. And out of any position where the Bengals can't afford to take a big swing, it feels like wide receiver because you're not immediately trying to fill a gap. Maybe taking a big swing on an edge rusher, that's not good. Or a tackle where you're going to need those guys, or a linebacker, or wherever, where you're going to need these guys to play almost immediately. I'm okay with taking a big swing on the safest position room on the team, which is wide receiver, between Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, even guys like Andre Yoshivas. I'm okay with taking big swings there. But it just proves just how terrible of a pick it is. And like I said, I don't know if you can sum it up any other way where the Bengals did try. They get this talent, they put them around some guys that have had success in this league, bringing in alumni. Obviously, Cincinnati is known throughout their history for having great wide receiving talent. From Chris Collinsworth, Chad Johnson, TJ, whoever. You bring those alumni in, and you go, hey, can you help this guy out? Can you help him understand what it takes to be a professional? And you just weren't able to do it. So like I said, I don't know if there's any other way that you can describe it than bringing a horse to water, the old cliche, the old idiom. Take a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. And that's where the Bengals, they felt like they really gave a fair shake at this thing. So I'll blast them for the pick. I won't blast them for the effort of trying to make it work here in town. There's plenty of things that you can blast the Bengals for. I don't think you can blast them for the attempt to try and see this talent come to fruition, to try and see this pick have its worth. Other news happened yesterday while we were live doing that Bengals show was that Trey Hendrickson is the story came out that he was going to go see a specialist, and he is in fact going to go under the knife. He's going to have core muscle surgery that'll keep him off the field for 6 weeks. That'll keep him out for 6 weeks, which if you're doing the math, that means that he's not coming back this year unless the Bengals make the divisional round in the postseason. So Trey Hendrickson out for the year. And for those also doing math, he has now missed the last 5 weeks. So a 6-week return on a surgery. He's already missed 5 weeks. So you wonder, well, why didn't we see the specialist early on? And there had been kind of a smokescreen around this injury from the get-go about what it was. He's healthy, he's not healthy. And as tired as the Jermaine Burton saga had been, somehow the Trey Hendrickson, at least in my brain, is even more tired because it's always the point of news. And we've speculated before about whether it seems valid that the Bengals will bring back Trey next year. It is incredibly clear that it's not happening. I've said here on the show is like, well, they'll look around and they say, hey, we need an edge rusher, and who's the best edge rusher? Well, some guy who's been in this room. But I think that Trey doesn't want to be here anymore. We saw Zach Taylor last week kind of get frustrated. As willing as you can see, because he's pretty guarded in those pressers. Even the Jermaine Burton stuff yesterday was still pretty guarded about what is actually happening behind the curtain. But even there, Zach Taylor looked incredibly frustrated just answering questions about Trey Hendrickson. It's between him and the medical staff. Well, now we know that he's going to get surgery. He's going to miss the rest of this year. A year in which we gave him a pay raise. A year in which he was wanting an extension. We were unwilling to give him one. And it proves that the Bengals' methodology on what they were trying to do with Trey Hendrickson. Hey, we're not going to give you an extension because you're over 30 years old, which is kind of a creed that the Bengals front office has had for years now. We're not willing to give you that extension that you're seeing guys like Myles Garrett and TJ Watt sign these record-breaking extensions because, one, as great as we think you are, you're not Myles Garrett. I know he had, whatever it was, 20 sacks last year, led the league in sacks, but you're not Myles Garrett. And you're not the most feared defensive edge rusher in the league. You're a fantastic, elite, all-pro talent, but you're not that. And secondly, it's past. We see in this league more often than not, especially defensive players, they get over that age, 30 years old, and there appears to be it's not a gradual cliff. It's not a gradual hill. It's a steep one. It's a steep cliff. And in 7 games this year, Trey Hendrickson has 4 sacks. And I don't know what's in the future for Trey. I don't know what kind of a deal is going to be in his future if some team's hungry enough to give him multiple years, 25, 30. I really do not know. I don't bog my brain down in the weeds of what the contracts are or what the value is. But I can tell you his time here in Cincinnati has come to an end. At least appears that way. Because of everything that has happened, and I got to tell you that it has been one of the more tiring stories that I can remember as a Cincinnati Bengals fan. I remember being a kid and the Carson Palmer stuff was happening. It's not that complex of a saga, but it's also not too far off. Stone, your takes from your opinion on this, how this Trey thing has kind of dwindled down.
It's unfortunate. You kind of went all in this year with just the 1-year raise for Trey Hendrickson to make him happy and ultimately go out there and play good football. But then Burrow goes down, and when Burrow goes down, that kind of, went to the trash can, I guess, because it really wasn't going to work out without Joe Burrow. So I feel like he's played his last down with the Cincinnati Bengals. I think that's probably a good thing. There's some people out there that speculate that maybe they'll use the tag. I don't see that happening. Again, probably just would have given him that extension last offseason if they planned to stick him around for a couple of years, especially coming off the injury. I think it'd be hard to believe that they would do such a thing. But, still remains the greatest signing in Bengals free agent history. He was a part of a lot of winning. We appreciate all the memories, but it's time to go in a different direction, and the Bengals are going to continue to try to figure out that position. And I'm a little concerned that they're going to back up the Brinks truck for Joseph Osai, who's playing good football right now. But, if they give him a ton of cash, I wouldn't feel good about that. I don't know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, it's you're going into this postseason in what I think is the third most important position on the field. Quarterback 1, tackles 2, and then edge rusher 3. And you know that you're going to need to do something there because Miles Murphy and Shamar Stewart aren't it. Joseph Osai's contract coming to an end this year. And there's not a lot of good options. Hopefully I don't know. I'll deal with that when the season's over. But man, oh man, it is for a very premium position. The Bengals, as I mentioned yesterday, have a lot of questions on that defensive side of the ball. They have a lot of holes, and I don't know if they have the money and the draft picks or the wherewithal to fill all the holes and get to the very low bar of just having a mediocre defense. The mediocre defense that we need in this town. Joseph Osai is playing better. And I'll say this, the Bengals front office oftentimes is lazy. They don't think too far outside the box. So it would not surprise me at all if Joseph Osai gets a big contract going into next year. We had a super chat from Ben Riley. $10 super chat. Thank you so much, Ben. Welp. Now we see why Logan dipped out. Anyway, so T is probably out too, right? As good as he was in the game, I'd prefer if he can do arithmetic when he eventually retires. Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen. I assume T's going to be concussion protocol this week. He's probably not going to play. He's not going to come back in time, especially when there's no real need to push for him to come back. I don't know how long concussion protocol. I know you have to pass the test. I know you have to be cleared. And the T. Higgins injuries are amounting, but they're not as concerning for me going forward. So I doubt that T. Higgins will play. I'll be surprised if T. Higgins plays this Sunday. I don't think he will. And we'll see if he comes back in the final 3 weeks. But I don't know. This Bengals team, they're wearing. We post a lot of videos here at Chatterbox. More good news. I always tease Stone making the time. There's good news coming for the Bengals. It feels like this year, other than the Joe Burrow coming back from injury, has just been time and time again bad news. Just here's another bad news. Oh, here's more bad news. Here's more bad news. Here's more bad news. And I am just so effing exhausted. I want something good to show up. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what that is, but I just want something good. Whether it be you rattle off 4 in a row and we're going into the final week of the year crossing our fingers that the Steelers lose their game against the Ravens, or whatever it is. I just need some good news here because I'm wearing thin as a Bengals fan. Another super chat from Ben Riley. Also, does Burton have a mood disorder, manic depression or something? I've seen great athletes get destroyed by mental issues. I'm not going to speculate on Jermaine Burton's if he has mental disorders or anything like that. I'm not going to do that. It's pretty clear based off of everything you've seen that at the very least, and I don't think I'm stepping on anyone's toes or saying anything bad here, but just immaturity at the very basic level of why he was unable to get the most out of his talent here. And I'll say this. One last thing about Jermaine Burton. I said this on the live stream yesterday. I'll say it again. I've seen this on Twitter. Some people in the chat yesterday said this. Oh, watch Jermaine Burton go to the Chiefs or the Bills or whoever, the Ravens, Browns, and be a 1,000-yard receiver. I don't care. I don't care if that happens because it wasn't working here. The Bengals tried to make it happen, tried to make it work. I do not care what Jermaine Burton does. I hope it works out. I hope he goes to the Texans or wherever. I hope he gets another shot in this league, and hopefully this release or this waiving kind of woke him up and he's able to make something and get the most out of his talent, because I want everyone in the world to get the most out of their God-given talents. But I don't care if he goes out and flourishes into a first-round pick. And I don't think it would look bad on the Bengals organization if that happens. I think the reason that people are like, watch this happen, I don't think it would look bad if he goes somewhere and matured enough to be a productive wide receiver or be a productive professional player. Because I think the Bengals truly did, and I believe them, when they say we gave this a conscious effort. We tried to make it work here in town. He didn't dress all year, and they kept him around. Last year, he had 4 catches for 107 yards from a third-round pick. I truly believe the Bengals when they say that they made this an effort. So I do not care if he goes somewhere else and makes it happen. I wish that does happen because I wish that for him. So that's my final point on this. What's that code again for the T-shirt deal, Stone?
Double, Double. Final day.
Final day. So be sure to help us out here. We greatly appreciate it. Get those holiday gifts in. All right, let's talk about college football because as we all know, that's my specialty. When we talk college football on this show, we get really into the weeds. Watched obviously the Big Ten championship. Indiana beats Ohio State, hands them their first loss of the year. They're undefeated going into the college football playoff. Number 1 team in the country, 13-10. Kirk Cignetti. I don't know if I've ever been as enamored with a college football coach or a college coach period as I am with Cignetti. For 2 reasons. One, Coach Cignetti was 50 years old in 2010. He was the wide receiver coach at Alabama. According to some research I did, he was making $250,000 to be the wide receiver coach at Alabama. At 50 years old. I didn't look up how long he's been married. I assume he's been married for a long time. I assume he had kids, and they were almost out of the house, if not already out of the house. He had already, middle-aged. Already done a lot with life. Pretty comfortable, making a good living, $250,000 in 2010. Just winning national championships, coaching underneath one of the greatest coaches of all time, Nick Saban at Alabama. And he decides, you know what? I have this low-stress job of being the wide receiver coach here at Alabama. I'm making $250,000, which I'm sure goes a long way in Alabama, especially in 2010. What am I going to go do? I'm going to leave this job. I'm going to leave this post, and I'm going to go be a head coach because I believe in myself. I believe there's something more for me out there. And where does he go? Does he go to a major Division I school? No. Does he go to a low FCS school? No. He goes to Division II. Called Indiana University, Pennsylvania, IUP, which if you guys were wondering is in a town called Indiana in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. He takes a half pay cut, making just over $100,000 at age 50, where his life had already been settled into, because he believed in himself to be a head coach. Coaches there for 6 years, coaches at James Madison, gets this job in Indiana. Indiana University, which has been historically the worst college football program in the country, the worst winning percentage. They've never won more than 8 games before he took over. And it had, I think, 5 winning seasons over the last 40. And what does he do at Big Ten Media Days before he'd coached a game? He says, "Google me, I win," which had become kind of a laugh, right? Become kind of a meme. Everyone was laughing at him. Oh, okay, you're going to win at Indiana? Good luck. Takes him to the college football playoff in year 1. Wins 11 games. Goes 11-2. How does he follow that up? Because I think we all knew that team wasn't up to snuff. I mean, they're a college football playoff team, but you saw them play actual contenders, and they weren't close. How does he follow that up? He creates a program that is undefeated in the Big Ten, which is probably the most powerful conference in college football right now. Dominates everyone along the way. And when you're standing toe-to-toe with the most talented roster in the sport, Ohio State, you look the part. Winning at the line, that's how you look the part. We've seen Washington a few years ago with Michael Penix. They have all these skill positions, and you can get far with that, but you got to win at the line. That's why when these SEC schools play teams outside the conference, that's an SEC school. Indiana looked the part. And I sent this to my friends without knowing the history of the sport. And was there a bit of hyperbole when I said this? Sure. Am I a slave of the moment? Sure. But I wondered, is Kirk Cincinnati the greatest college football hire in the history of the sport? I get it. Nick Saban goes to Alabama. They win multiple national championships. We haven't seen the longevity. They haven't won crap other than a Big Ten championship in year 2. But to take the perceived worst college football program in the nation, historically the worst winning percentage in the sport, and in year 1 go to the college football playoff, and in year 2 win the Big Ten championship, beat Ohio State, and look the part while doing it. I don't know if I've ever seen anything. And this is a sport that the same titans of it have been that way for decades. I've said, you put me in cryo sleep, wake me up in 20 years, and Ohio State's still probably running the town. And Alabama's still at the top. And LSU and Texas and all these teams are still championship contenders. And Indiana has turned themselves into a championship contender in year 2. And my friends, when I said that, I said, I think he might be the greatest coaching hire of all time. They said, well, it's the NIL. You couldn't do this 15 years ago in Indiana. In 2010, you couldn't do that. Yeah. So, I don't care. He's doing it in the NIL era. Could Amazon be the company that they were in 1895? No, they are today because of the internet. I don't care what era he was hired in the NIL era. And he's doing it in the NIL era. I talked about it on the show before. This is an opportunity to flip that mode of college football where it's always been the same guys at the top. There's now an opportunity to flip that. And he's doing it not at Ole Miss, not at Texas A&M, not at Michigan State, not at Wisconsin. He's doing it for the Indiana Hoosiers, fueled by nothing but John Cougar Mellencamp's pockets and some masculinity, some bravado. I'm just enamored by what he's been able to do. Kirk Cignetti for the Indiana Hoosiers, beating Ohio State in the Big Ten Championship. It's truly amazing. It is really one of the best turnarounds I've ever seen. Stone, you're gonna push back on the best coaching hire ever, which is fair. That's a fair pushback of it.
I don't think it's crazy. I don't think it's crazy at all. I mean, look, he's lost 2 games as the head coach at Indiana. We'll see what he does here in the playoff, but as you pointed out, you can have a quarterback, you can have some fun skill guys, maybe a couple of DBs. They're winning in the trenches. Like, they went toe-to-toe with Ohio State. And Ohio State's got some dudes on that offensive line. That offensive line for Ohio State is the best in the country. Julian Sayin hadn't had a grass stain on his jersey all year, and he was getting lit up in Indianapolis on Saturday. And they got dudes in the trenches defensively there as well. So does he reap the benefits of a new age of college football? Yes, and we talked about this yesterday off the air, but that's fine. He deserves credit for that, right? Would this be able to be possible, pre-NIL? No, because nobody would want to go to Indiana, but he's taking advantage of the current times. And, he's getting backed by their athletic department, which is huge. He's got a lot of support there. And he found a quarterback as well in Fernando Mendoza. And I wasn't drinking all the Fernando Mendoza Kool-Aid. And if you didn't watch the game and you're just looking at the stats, you're like, whatever. He played fine against Ohio State. He looked really good, and he had some big boy throws in that game, and he took some shots. First play of the game, Caden Curry's getting ready to take his head off. He's laying down on the field. Couple plays later, he's back in there, and he's dialing it up. So Cignetti deserves a ton of credit. We'll see. Wouldn't surprise me if they went one and done. We've kind of talked about the setup of the bracket, how, you get the bye for the 1 seed, but then you get the winner of 8 and 9. Remember Oregon last year? They had Ohio State. Congrats, you're the 1 overall seed. You get to play Ohio State, your first game of the playoffs. So they get either Alabama or Oklahoma, which isn't ideal for them, but this team absolutely can win the national title. And I don't think that's a crazy take. I'm not going to, sit here and say you're definitely right, but Saban, that was like an easier hire, right? This was a gamble kind of for Indiana. He was at James Madison and Elon and a D2 school, and he had won at all those places, but can that translate to the Big Ten? And you're not taking over Michigan, taking over Indiana, which was a bottom feeder in the Big Ten, obviously. So he deserves a lot of credit. He says some things that I don't want to say make you cringe a little bit, but sometimes you're like, okay. But he backs it up with winning. That's something I love. If people are going to go out there and talk the talk, you kind of look like a clown if you go out there and lose. He doesn't lose. He wins.
Yeah, everyone laughed at him. Big Ten Media Days last year. Google me. I win. And they were like, okay, whatever. Yeah, you go win in Bloomington, Indiana, in the Big Ten. You go do it. And he's done that. And I think it has amazed people. Listen, I sat down for that game. In the first play, Mendoza gets hammered out of the game. And we've all seen this happen before. This team that everyone's really excited for, a non-major power team playing one of the big dogs of the sport. Ohio State, maybe the big dog of the sport. And you're like, you lost your quarterback in the first play. We've all seen this story before. It's going to be 65-10. It's going to be 50. It's going to be a bloodbath. He comes right back out there. Their defense, their offensive line, the pushes at the line, they look the part. They look like a championship contender. And here's the thing. I saw someone in the chat be like, we got to see what he does in the college football playoff. You're right. And I'm speaking with hyperbole. It's not a better hire than what Nick Saban did at Alabama is incredible. And that was already a power, but to make them consistently championship contender and win all the championship he did, we're talking about the zero to hero aspect of Cignetti and the Indiana Hoosiers. But I'll say this. We do got to see what happens in the playoff, but I think they've already, by beating Ohio State in the Big Ten Championship, obviously they want to go further. Obviously they want to actually compete for the national championship. I think most Indiana fans are cool. They're like, man, we won the Big Ten championship. Like, winning that Big Ten championship game is as good as getting to the semifinals to them. And I don't think I'm stepping on ground here. It's just truly unbelievable what he's been able to do. And it's awesome that he's sticking there and he's staying there and he's going to continue to coach there. And I hope he continues to have this success. I hope Bloomington truly does turn into a power, because I don't think it would surprise anybody if next year they're 7-5, 8-4. They take a major step back because of one year in the transfer portal, didn't get the quarterback, didn't get the impact players that you want. But you can build off this. You can turn into a perennial power here in the Big Ten, and I'm excited to see what happens with Cignetti. And I hope he stays there. I know he took the contract, and I know he turned down Penn State, and I know he did all those things. So it seems like he's going to – but I hope it's a long-term thing and they can continue to build off what they're able to do. I'm enamored by it. I'm enamored by it. Stone, did you talk yesterday about the college football playoff rankings?
I did.
And obviously it was funny because people ask me, who do you like in college football? I go, well, I don't watch a whole lot of college football. I don't care for it all that much. But if you ask me, you put a gun in my head and said, who do you want to win the national championship every single? I'd say Notre Dame. And we were at Smoke Justice, and the owner of Smoke Justice came up to me, and I must have told him I was a Notre Dame fan because he kept coming out to me. He's like, our boys didn't get in. Our boys didn't get in about the college football. What was all the controversy? Sum up all the controversy when it comes to not letting Notre Dame in and all of the criticisms that people had of the college football playoff going into this year.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to unpack there. So there was obviously, there's always going to be controversy, right? 14 playoff, there was always controversy. 12 team, yeah, the best couple of teams are for sure getting in, but there's still some controversy as far as teams not getting in. Texas, fans were complaining about that. They had 3 losses. It's not the 3 losses for me. It's that they went to UK and went to Mississippi State and were lucky to win those games. Texas out. No issues with that. And then you're kind of sitting there going, all right, Alabama, Notre Dame, Miami, and Vandy are 4 teams, and 2 of those teams have an opportunity to get in. Now, Notre Dame had been ranked above Miami ever since the first college football playoff rankings came out, and they stayed that way. And then the final time that the rankings came out on Selection Day, Miami jumped Notre Dame because they beat them in week 1. And my biggest thing is, well, if you're going to do head-to-head as a tiebreaker, why you wait until the final weekend to do that? That, to me, doesn't make any sense. I'm also for getting the better team in, and I think when you just sit down there and look at it, I think Notre Dame's a better team than Miami. And I think there was a real possibility that Notre Dame could have won the national title this year. Like, I don't think they would have been a top 5 favorite, but I think right now they would probably be like a top 6 favorite to win the national title, and they don't get in, and obviously there's an issue with that. But I would have put Notre Dame in. That was really my only gripe. I had no issues with Alabama getting in, right? You don't want to diminish conference championships. They played in the SEC title game. It's the best conference in football. They went to Georgia, a team that has a bye, and beat them at their place. That's significant, and I was good with that. But if there was one thing I would have changed, it would have been Notre Dame over Miami, personally.
Yeah. No, I hear that. When they expanded the college football playoff from 4 teams to 12, I remember we'll shout out Jacob. Jacob, obviously Jacob Tissett used to be on Chatterbox here, huge college football fan. And I take all of your guys' opinion because you watch it way more than I do. I take it in, and I mold my opinion based off the information you guys tell me. And I heard from multiple college football fans that when they expand from 4 to 12, that these arguments, right? Florida State a few years ago, these arguments of, well, 4 versus 5, they don't want to hear them anymore. Because with 12 teams, if you think you're an actual championship contender, then you have no reason to complain about not being in the top 12. You have 12 games to prove your case that you have a chance to play for it. And Notre Dame had to win one of their first 2 games, and they didn't do that. They had 2 games to win. They didn't win either one. A&M and Miami. But I just recall when they expanded this, I don't want to hear any more arguments. If you can't make the top 12, you don't deserve. You don't have the right to argue about it. And I always thought that was a little bit silly. Two things about that. One, I always thought that a little bit silly because, of course, when there's more teams in the tournament, you're going to have, in more spots, you're going to have more things to argue about. There's 68 teams that make the NCAA tournament, and every single March Madness, we argue about who deserved to make it, who didn't deserve to make it. So the idea that just because there's 12 teams, you no longer have to argue about it, that I always thought that was silly. But I also agree in the fact that in this sport that has been predicated on powers and guys that are actual championship contenders, and if the idea behind going from 4 teams to 12 teams was to get some of these guys that were just on the outside, like these 5th and 6th ranked teams that actually are championship contenders, give them a shot, then I think the college football playoff has succeeded in that. No, I don't think Notre Dame was an actual championship contender. I don't think that there was a world in which Notre Dame was going to win the college football playoff this year. So, while I hear both cases, yeah, it's the methodology is certainly way all over the map when it comes to college. If we're going to continue to do 12 teams, then they got to tell us, right? They've got to at least lay out the roadmap of how you get there. We can't be speculating and have 12 guys or however many guys are on the committee sitting around the room just like, well, I think it's different this week. We can't keep doing that. There's got to be some more system. And they're probably going to expand, and they're probably going to do something with these conference championships. And I do think it's better for the sport because I think when your team – but this way, 2 years ago, Notre Dame loses those first 2 games. Notre Dame fans are checked out for the rest of this year. A couple years ago, you lose 1 game in the SEC, you're checked out for the rest of this year, for the rest of the season. Maybe check in for your rivalry game, and that's that. So it's good to have more fan bases constantly engaged to your playoff. And they're going to expand it, and they're going to continue to mold it, and there's going to be some tinkerings. But I don't feel too terrible for Notre Dame. I am mystified by the process, and I wish they would lay out a roadmap for it. But we're going to continue to have these arguments as long as there is a tournament, as long as they are just deciding at will who the best teams in the country are. Stone, what's that code again?
DOUBLE, code double, chatterboxsports.com/store. T-shirts, they're up. Final day of the sale, Black Friday sale. I know it's December 9th, but it's still the Black Friday sale. Get some swag. Help us out. We appreciate it.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting what they do with these conference championships because it's pretty clear that they've come to an end. I will say this about Notre Dame. I think it's a terrible look that they said, oh, we're not playing in the bowl game. I was like, well, why don't you want to practice for a month or play a game and have these seniors that aren't going to play professional go to some area of the country and spend 6 days in Florida or Boca, wherever, Bahamas, wherever they were going to go. It's just a bad look. Just a bad look. It seems like sour grapes because it is. It is sour grapes from them. So, Stone Shield show coming up here in just a few moments. Did you see the reports about Kyle Schwarber? See the Pirates, 4 years, $120 million?
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
Should we do it? Dear Reds fans, you were never getting Kyle Schwarber.
No way he goes to Pittsburgh, right?
I don't think he'll go to Pittsburgh. And I think that there is a PR stunt. I think a lot of this with Pittsburgh is kind of a PR stunt. I think that they know that they have had that. Since Francisco Liriano signed a multi-year deal, they haven't signed a free agent to a multi-year deal in almost a decade. Francisco Liriano, remember last time he pitched? And they just haven't. I think the owners are saying, hey, you're giving us a bad look. That graph comes out about who's the most profitable, who spends the percentage-wise least amount of money compared to how much money they bring in. And you've got this young, one of the best players in the league in Paul Skeens, pitchers. Yeah, I think a lot of it is PR. I think they are going to make a move eventually, the Pirates, but we'll see. I mean, as I've said before when it comes to these contracts, in 2015, Boston Red Sox fans were sending death threats over to John Lester because he turned down their 5-year, $135 million deal for I don't know the exact it was 100. I know the numbers. It was 135 million for Boston, 155 million for the Cubs. They said, oh, you're going to be a perennial loser. And even he clearly wasn't that. But you think like $20 million is an absurd amount of money. And there are more morally sound people than me if you can turn down $20 million because you either want to go home or you want to be a winner or play for a winning organization or whatever like that. You're more morally sound, or you've got better morals, I guess, than I do. You got a better compass than I do, because I'm going to the highest bidder if I was a professional athlete, and always would be, unless it was like $2 million, fine. But $20 million, like if the next best deal is $100 million, we'll see. 4-year, $120 million. No, I don't think he's gonna go to the Buccos, but that would be cool. I low key want the Buccos to be good because I like teasing Reds fans about it. See you guys tomorrow. Stone Shield Show coming right up.
All right, here we go. Welcome into the Stone Shield Show. My name is Stone Shield. Happy to be here on a Tuesday. Plenty of stuff to discuss. Lots of Bengal stuff I want to get to on today's show. Kind of a noteworthy news day yesterday for Cincinnati. Jermaine Burton, he's waived. He's gone. That experiment has reached its end. And what a complete disaster for the Cincinnati Bengals and Jermaine Burton. I have my thoughts on him and how his tenure as a Cincinnati Bengal went. Also, Trey Hendrickson, he's opting to get surgery. That is going to end his season, essentially. They said 6 weeks, right? The Bengals, if we're going to see Trey Hendrickson back again, the Bengals probably need to be in the conference championship or maybe even the Super Bowl. And we all understand that that is not going to be happening, especially after last week's loss to the Buffalo Bills. It wasn't happening before that, but that kind of put the nail in the coffin, so to speak, a little bit with him. So we have some thoughts on Trey Hendrickson as well. And also, Joe Burrow had some comments, as he always does, after the game at his press conference. And James Rapoport was talking about this over at Cincinnati Bengals Talk. And I thought it was interesting, as Rapoport was a little bit worried, a little bit concerned with some of Joe's comments after the game against Buffalo. I have my thoughts on that there as well. So make sure you stick around for the entirety of our Bengals segment here today. Also, it is Tuesday. It is Tuesday morning. That means it is time for our NFL Power Rankings. We do them every single week here live at the show on Tuesdays. Then that is out on YouTube later in the day as well. Andrew Collinsworth does a tremendous job with the graphic that goes out that with that. So we certainly appreciate Andrew, his contributions to the show. Not a ton of changes. We do have a team debuting in the power rankings. Hard to believe that this team continues to win football games, but not many changes there at the top. Patriots obviously off. Rams have a big-time victory. Packers have a huge win as they knock off the Chicago Bears, and that division's a really, really good division. Minnesota obviously slipping with their disaster at quarterback there and J.J. McCarthy. Despite the fact he played well against the Commanders, big-time win for O'Connell and those guys, but kind of, really good three teams there, and the West is tremendous as well. So we'll kind of go through our power rankings as we always do here on a Tuesday morning. Also, finalists for the Heisman Trophy, they've been announced. There's 4 of them: Mendoza, Jeremiah Love, Julian Sain, and Diego Pavia. I have my thoughts on that as well. Kind of feels like we all know Mendoza is going to win, but do want to highlight those 4 guys and kind of discuss the seasons that they've had, because they've all had really good years here in in 2025. And also, the Eagles played last night. They played the Los Angeles Chargers. What a crazy game. Didn't seem like either team valued the football whatsoever, as there was fumbles, interceptions, all kinds of stuff. Just messy game at SoFi Stadium. Justin Herbert's playing with a broken left hand. Didn't really play well, but gutted through it. They asked him to run a lot, took some serious punishment. Had kind of a weird moment there after the game with Laura Rutledge. We'll talk about that. Chargers pick up a huge win. Eagles lose again. They're spiraling downward. Things are going to get really noisy in Philadelphia. It kind of feels like, remember a couple of years ago when the Eagles had that tremendous start and then they just went into a complete tailspin and then just got blown out in the first round of the playoffs? Kind of feels like it's heading in that direction again as well. So we'll talk about the Eagles. We'll talk about the Chargers. Monday Night Football yesterday. And, of course, winter meetings underway for Major League Baseball. Day one was yesterday. Some noteworthy topics of conversation have come out of day one of winter meetings. Terry Francona spoke publicly. He talked about the outlook of the team, briefly talked about Kyle Schwarber, Hunter Green as well. Our boys here at Chatterbox Reds went live yesterday, late last night. Nick Kirby, Craig Sandlin, and Mike Hart live on the channel kind of breaking that down. Seems like there's some momentum here with Kyle Schwarber, and it seems like the Reds are gearing up, ready to give him a sizable offer and make him, the highest paid free agent certainly in Cincinnati Reds history, but we'll see. I think there's some cautious optimism surrounding the ball club and, of course, Kyle Schwarber as well. So that's all coming up on today's show. Appreciate everybody being here. Make sure you hit that thumbs up icon if you haven't done so already. Also hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. I believe we're like 17 subscribers away from 21,000 here at the channel. So help us out. Hit that sub button if you haven't done so already. YouTube.com/chatterboxsports. Also, want to point out we've been kind of pushing the t-shirt sale that we've had up on our website, chatterboxsports.com/store. Today is the last day for our t-shirt sale. So make sure you go over there, check out some t-shirts. Chatterbox Reds, Chatterbox Bengals, Chatterbox Bearcats, some really cool swag that you can get for a family member this holiday season, or, of course, yourself as well. Use code DOUBLE, DOUBLE. 2 shirts, $40. Again, Bengals, Reds, Bearcats, you name it. It's up there on our website, chatterboxsports.com/store, and 100% of the proceeds go towards your favorite Chatterbox Sports creators. Last day of the sale. Use code DOUBLE over there, chatterboxsports.com/store. All right, let's start with the Cincinnati Bengals here on the show, and as I mentioned, there's several topics I want to get into with the Bengals, but let's start with Jermaine Burton. Burton obviously waived yesterday. He is no longer a Cincinnati Bengal, can't even get through 2 full seasons here in the NFL with Cincinnati, and really just a complete disaster. This will go down as one of, if not the worst pick in franchise history, right? There was always some risk taking Jermaine Burton. Kind of had that, people say that dog in him. Well, he had that beware of dog as well, because the red flags were all over the place. Spent some time at Georgia, ended up going to Alabama, and had a really good final year at Alabama. Was a dynamic playmaker, was a tough physical guy with great speed, and had a beautiful, go ball that he would just run straight down the field, and they would throw it up, and he would have an opportunity to make plays down the field. And I think when he was drafted, pairing that with a Joe Burrow and a Jamar Chase and even a T. Higgins was like, wow, this could be really, really exciting for the Cincinnati Bengals. And obviously it did not work. A complete disaster. He had some public off-the-field issues last year. If you remember in preseason, Kirk Herbstreit, Al Michaels were doing a game, and Kirk was like, there was some conversation about him falling asleep in meetings. Just ridiculous for that to happen as a professional football player. You're playing a game for a living and getting paid millions of dollars, albeit on a rookie contract, and you're going to be falling asleep in meetings, or there's at least going to be rumors about you falling asleep in meetings. Just completely embarrassing and, quite frankly, disgusting that was even an issue for Jermaine Burton. So that was kind of in the preseason. He showed some flashes, right? Made some plays in the preseason. You remember as a rookie that first preseason game, he hardly was even playing, and it took him a few preseason games before they even trusted him to play in a preseason game, which is just downright outrageous. And then he misses the walkthrough that made him inactive the first time. And then later on, he had the off-the-field incident, the eviction, right? And that caused him to miss the final game of the year last year against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And some of that stuff is just really, really messy. There was, people coming out, a girl that he was in a relationship with, accused him of some stuff, and, want to dive into really all of that. The charges ultimately were dropped, but just some of that stuff, not good. The evictions did happen, right? And Like, come on. Like, what do you mean? What are you doing? Like, you're breaking protocol with your landlord or not paying your rent on time. Just immature stuff, obviously, from Jermaine Burton. And then Duke Tobin, I was at the NFL Combine last year, and people were asking Duke Tobin about Jermaine Burton. He was like, yeah, he basically did nothing for us as a rookie, and this is going to be a big year for him to show some value for us. We believe in the player, and we just need to see him translate that to good decisions and ultimately making plays on the football field. Zach Taylor at the Combine kind of echoed similar sentiments to that as well. And then we were all kind of waiting, and there was some positive momentum around it. Dan Pitcher talked about this offseason, how, Burton's doing well, right? He's locked in. He's performing well in practice. And you saw the reports of, T. Higgins kind of take him under his wing a little bit, right? Hushman Zada, former Bengal legend, of course, working out with him in the offseason. And that was certainly a step in the right direction, we all thought. And then this year he hasn't been able to be active for a single football game, and there hasn't been anything that really has come out publicly about, he did this or he didn't do this. Just hadn't been out there on the football field each and every week. And if you remember the game, Jamar Chase, he was suspended. T. Higgins has missed some time being banged up. Even in those opportunities, wasn't able to even be active. I'm not talking about getting the football. I'm not talking about going for 6+ catches in a game. I'm talking about putting your pads on and dressing for the game and be given a helmet and shoulder pads. Wasn't able to do it at all this year. And then it kind of reached its breaking point here this past week against Buffalo. Didn't travel with the team. Was suspended. Zach Taylor and others have declined to comment on what exactly he did to deserve that suspension. But that was kind of the last straw for Jermaine Burton. And honestly, it was a shock to a lot of people that he stayed around this long with this organization, right? And I think when something like this happens, one, it's kind of a Bengal thing to do, right? If he played in Philadelphia or certainly in New England in the Belichick era or the 49ers or one of these the Packers, proud organizations, probably wouldn't have had another opportunity to come back even in year 2. The Bengals gave him that opportunity, and Zach Taylor, a lot's been made about his reaction when they picked him. That video kind of has resurfaced and gone viral again. Zach Taylor doesn't always show a ton of emotion when they make these draft picks. Yeah, he always has a smile on his face and he's excited, but he was kind of banging his chair a little bit after that Jermaine Burton selection. Clearly looked like that was a guy Zach Taylor was pounding the table for, and appears to be a huge whiff. And I think if he would have asked Zach, he probably would have moved off him a lot earlier than they did. Maybe Duke Tobin even would have moved off him a little bit earlier there as well. I'm sure there's other coaches and other teammates that probably would have had that same thought process as well. My gut tells me somebody in that building with the last name Blackburn or Brown was wanting to hold on for dear life with Jermaine Burton just because they allocated a top-of-the-line resource, a third-round pick, to a guy. And remember, this is a guy that they drafted and it was like, this could be the replacement to T. Higgins. Now, it doesn't hurt as badly now because you reached an agreement with T. Higgins this offseason, and he's going to be around for the long term, and you opted to do that. But if you remember going into the 2024 season, there was a lot of people that thought, this is probably it for T. Higgins in Cincinnati. And then they get hot at the end. T. Higgins kind of goes off at the end, and then you got Joe Burrow pounding the table saying, actually, T's a need. We need him. And the whole kind of dialogue around T. Higgins kind of switched after that point, and ultimately you end up keeping T. And this doesn't hurt as bad, but it's another draft pick that was a miss. He can't even get through his rookie contract. He can't even get through year 2 as an NFL player. Just a complete disaster for Jermaine Burton. And again, the signs were there. The talent was there in college. People were a little bit all over the place. I think there were some people that thought he could be, a first-round pick or a second-round pick. He definitely was a more talented player than where he went in the draft. I think that is pretty obvious to anybody that watched him at Alabama or even at Georgia in limited playing time there as well. And Cincinnati felt like they got a steal. This is something as an organization that they have done in the past, right? They've taken risky guys. Shoot, they took Joe Mixon. That absolutely worked out for the Cincinnati Bengals, right? They have done that in the past, particularly in the Marvin Lewis era. And, they rolled the dice on Jermaine Burton. Luckily for them, it was kind of a position where they could afford to roll the dice. And if it would have hit, it would have hit with massive success, right? So it would have been a grand slam home run, right? Imagine if you had a deep threat that down the field that was kind of just a go ball guy that you could say, yep, run a streak and we'll throw it up to you and kind of take the top off the defense. Pair that with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, right? Yoshi struggled to start the year. Thought he made some, nice plays in the game against Buffalo, and ultimately I respect him as a player. 6th-round pick, right? He's not expected to be some stud. He's a 3, and he's a solid 3 for this team. But that spot was Jermaine Burton's for the taking, and he simply could not get it. And not only could he not get it, he couldn't even dress. He couldn't even be a rotational guy. He couldn't even be a returner. Chuck has shown some good moments in the return game of late, but really, Chuck Sizzle has been hurt and hasn't been really effective in the return game, apart from obviously 2 times where he's housed it for a touchdown, or I believe 3 times now in his career as well. But beyond that, the consistency wasn't really there. You saw some juice from Burton in the return game in preseason games. Wasn't able to get out on the football field. I don't want to speculate on what exactly went wrong with Jermaine Burton, what went down, what's going on, what caused him to be suspended. At the end of the day, you hope for the best for the guy, right? I mean, it was a whiff, and it was a horrible pick, and it won't go down as a horrible pick, but hopefully he can figure his stuff out and, ultimately find a way to latch on to a team and, play some football, right? Because the talent's there, and you always worry about a guy like that. Well, it's like if he loses the game, where's he going to go from there? This is something that can really lock you in, keep you focused, keep you out of trouble. And, I don't know if another team is going to take a chance on him. They're certainly not going to pick him up off waivers because they would have to deal with his rookie contract. That's not going to happen. But potentially as a free agent down the line, could he be a guy that gets picked up and given a second chance? I don't know. The Bengals gave him a second chance. You could argue they gave him a third and a fourth chance there as well, and he completely missed on it. And just seems like a troubled individual here at this point. And you're hoping that he can figure out his life and that he can be put in a spot where he can have some success in the future. But at the end of the day, the Bengals gave him a long leash, much longer leash than I think most other teams in the National Football League would have given him. He wasn't able to do anything with it. It's a shame. It's a complete shame because it's another missed pick by Duke Tobin, right? But again, you kind of get away with it a little bit because you have your receivers, apart from your starting quarterback, are the strongest part of your team. So you get away with it a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's a miss. When you took him in the 3rd round, didn't take him in the 6th round, didn't take him in the 7th round, took him in the 3rd round. You look across the NFL, there's a lot of studs that were taken in the 3rd round. Bengals missed again, and that was official after his release yesterday. All right, Trey Hendrickson. Kind of shortly after that, obviously Zach has his press conference, as he always does on Mondays, and then they kind of transition a little bit to Trey Hendrickson. And, it's kind of been a reoccurring theme. The first question typically at these press conferences is, what's the latest on Trey? And Zach pretty early on has said either doubtful or has ruled him out as far as his ability to play in the following game. And Trey kind of got off to a bit of a slower start. Certainly didn't pick up where he left off last year, back-to-back years with 17.5 sacks. Was a great player on this team, kind of a catalyst for what they were able to accomplish defensively when they were good, right? Obviously, they haven't been good in a couple of years, but, that Super Bowl team, the 22 team, he was a great player for him, and he will go down as the best free agent signing in the history of the franchise. And unfortunately, he gets hurt. And there's some people out there, and we've speculated a little bit here at the show, like, well, is he, if he was under contract, would he be playing right now? Nobody ultimately at the end of the day will know other than Trey Hendrickson, right, whether or not he could have been out there with this team. But the injury happened in the Green Bay game. He leaves that game early. He misses the following game against Pittsburgh, and then he tries to come back for the Jet game, re-aggravates it, and we obviously have not seen him since that point. And it's disappointing. And they kind of went all in on Trey Hendrickson this year. They're saying, you know what, we don't want to give you a long-term deal, but we'll give you this raise. And, it's crazy to think about when you sit there and look at the Bengals record right now and how bad they are on defense and just all the holes that they have on this team. But let's be very clear here. The expectation was Super Bowl coming into the season. Jamar obviously had his deal, or didn't actually officially have his deal, but you knew he was going to get one. Joe was under contract. Burrow, T gets his deal, and then they bump up Trey Hendrickson. It was, let's go win a Super Bowl this year, especially with it only being a one-year thing for Trey Hendrickson. You start out 2-0. Burrow, of course, gets hurt, and you kind of can write all that aside when that happens for your starting quarterback. But just frustration when it comes to the Trey Hendrickson thing. Also a lot to be grateful for and a lot to appreciate for him and his time here in Cincinnati. He played through a lot, and I'm not going to sit here and say that he could have played through the injuries that he had this year. I have no idea, right? There's people that are a little bit ticked off about that and maybe think he could have, but at the end of the day, we don't know. The one thing I can criticize him for is how he has handled the off seasons in the past, right? I mean, remember the whole off season we were talking about Trey Hendrickson after they got Higgins and Chase done early. We just spent weeks and months on end talking about Trey Hendrickson, and he was making a mess of the whole thing. He was leaking stuff to Schefter. He was going on McAfee, shows up to a practice, and all the beat reporters, people that cover the team, are supposed to be covering the practice, but he wants to hold like a little private interview on the corner of the practice field and talk to them. and just complain about stuff. I did not understand that at all. I think he's a selfish player. I think he's a really, really good player. I think his best days are certainly behind him. But he's a selfish player, and he showed that over the course of the past few years. And I think it's ready to move on and go in a different direction with Trey Hendrickson. Again, grateful and thankful for what he was able to do with this team and accomplish with this team. But you can just kind of see it with Zach talking. Right, it'd be interesting to know what Duke thinks as well. Duke, of course, doesn't talk during the year, so we have no idea. But you could just tell Zach is kind of over the whole thing. And even this offseason, he just was, to do that. It's one thing to want your money, I understand that, but to hold a little private interview in the middle of a practice off on the corner of the field just to complain about stuff, I don't understand it. I don't understand it at all. He thought he was doing the right thing, but I just can't imagine. Can't imagine being an NFL player, but being in that position and doing that is really hard for me to wrap my head around at the end of the day. So, crushing success. Trey Hendrickson's tenure in Cincinnati should be appreciated. Fans should be very grateful for him. I know I certainly am, but it's time to move on. And then you got to figure out what you do with that spot. And kind of alluded to this on Off the Bench a little bit. I'm concerned that they're going to see what Osai has done over the past few weeks and say, oh, yep, that's a guy that we want long-term. We picked him. We gave him the prove-it-year deal, and we want to go all in on this guy. And I've tried to make this point on several occasions. Joseph Osai, with his age and some of the production that he's had and the position in which he plays, he's going to garner a sizable contract, especially when you couple it with the effort that he shows out on the football field as well. And I don't think it would be in the best interest of the organization to do that. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he went somewhere else and had success. But you have to change something, right? And they didn't do it last year. They said, yep, we're going to roll it back, and our change is going to be that we start 2 rookie linebackers. Well, 1, that's a bad idea. But 2, you need different kinds of change, right? Different personnel. Right, even if, look, guys are going to flash, guys are going to have good moments, that doesn't mean they're consistent enough to be starters for you. B.J. Hill was great when you got him for the Giants. We appreciate B.J. Hill. Again, similar to Trey Hendrickson. A lot of this team's success he was a part of. He was playing good football when you were going on those playoff runs. You gave him a 3-year contract at the end of last year. Right, I think the general consensus around everybody around the team was that, you know what, BJ, we love you, we appreciate you, it's time to go in a different direction. And they responded by giving him a 3-year deal right at the beginning of free agency. Didn't understand that. They opted to restructure Geno Stone as a part instead of, cutting ties with him. Right, and it shows you how they just did not do anything about that position. If Geno Stone can continue to go out there and play for this football team and play mass snaps on a weekly basis, that shows you they have no confidence in the guys that they have behind them. And that shows you that they just completely neglected to address that position this offseason. We have all been saying that. We've all been banging the table saying, what in the world are you doing to address this position? They didn't. And because of that, they have to roll Geno Stone out there on a weekly basis and really a play-by-play basis as well. And that certainly cost them. I need to see wholesale changes on this defense. Osai, we appreciate the effort. We appreciate the uptick in production. Time to move on. Myles Murphy's going to be a part of this team next year, right? He's under a rookie deal. They're going to give him they're not going to move off Myles Murphy. He's going to be here next year. You got to pair him with somebody else. I think what Cedric Johnson's done at that position has been impressive. Maybe a diamond in the rough type guy. You took him in the 6th round. I've been all in on Cedric Johnson since the moment they took him. Didn't get much playing time last year. Starting to see an uptick in playing time this year. I think that's positive, but you need to continue to address that position. And obviously, Shamar Stewart, we haven't seen him, and what we've seen from him has been a complete disaster there as well. But it kind of feels like time to move off of Trey Hendrickson, go in a different direction, appreciate him, respect him. Greatest Bengal free agent signing in the history of the franchise, but time to move on and address that position in a different fashion, especially considering where you're at on defense, right? If you were close this year, right, you were a playoff team and you wanted one more crack at a Super Bowl with the core that you have in place, then maybe you tag him. But you're a ways away from that right now, as unfortunate as that is to say out loud. Lastly, Joe Burrow. Obviously talks after every single game, has a press conference. And James Rapine did a video on this. Rapine's great. Cincinnati Bengals Talk on YouTube. Writes Locked On Bengals podcast. He's great at covering the Cincinnati Bengals. And he kind of had, I'm not going to say a hot take, borderline hot take talking about the Burrow press conference. And certainly a very good video over on YouTube kind of breaking down his thoughts on that. And, I was watching the Joe Burrow press conference shortly after the game ended. And it was interesting to see kind of his tone. Usually when Joe Burrow takes the podium after a loss, he's very, very ticked off, and you saw that a lot last year. And he was just like, you know what, we're not a very good football team. We need to be better. I need to be better, and go from there. Wasn't the dialogue at all for Joe Burrow at his press conference, and he used the phrase, that's just kind of how the cookie crumbles. He used it twice. And that's kind of waving the white flag a little bit, admitting defeat. And he was like, yeah, well, it was going to be an uphill battle when I came back, right? I'm not worried about him having a little bit of perspective, right? You remember when Joe Flacco would take the podium, he always had, perspective. That's not really what you're looking for with Joe Burrow, because he's your $50 million guy. He's the face of your franchise. He's the best player in the National Football League. You want to see a guy after a loss that's ticked off and, is like, we got to be better, and holding everybody and himself to a standard. And you didn't really see that. But I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt here because he was hurt again, right? If they were in this spot and had this record and he had played every single game, which, by the way, would not be the record that they have, if he had played every single game and he had this kind of tone after a Buffalo game, I would be a little bit more concerned or worried about it. But he had missed so much time. He's had all these serious injuries. He's missed so much time. And to be able to come back and still be as good as he is and has played these past 2 weeks is absolutely incredible. So I don't have an issue with that. But I continue to say this as it relates to Joe Burrow. There's an opt-out in his contract after 2027, right? The 2025 season obviously is about to wrap. There's 2 more years of the deal through 2029 as well, but potentially could get out of the contract in 2 years. That's the only thing I'm worried about with Joe Burrow, right? He's going to be fine up here. Again, when he got hurt, I was a little bit worried, but then once you heard him talk publicly for the first time, you're like, all right, he's back. And then you see him play against Baltimore, all right, he's back. They're in a tough spot as a team right now. The season obviously has not gone according to plan whatsoever. I don't have an issue with him having some perspective. Saying, you know what, I'm thankful to be out there. We got a lot we got to work on, but I'm happy to be out there and I want to put on a show for the team. Do I wish he would have taken maybe a little bit of ownership, turning the ball over twice? Maybe, but, he played a great game. And it was, honestly, if you take those 2 plays away, kind of an all-time game for Joe Burrow there as well. Again, kind of fluky on the interceptions. He didn't really take ownership for that. But, at the end of the day, I'm not too bent out of shape about that. But if this team continues to miss the playoffs, and if this defense remains as bad as it is and gets in the way of them going to the postseason next year and then the year after, then you get worried about Joe Burrow. If they're having the season that they're having this year and he's playing every single game next year, I get a little bit worried about him potentially wanting out of Cincinnati. There's a way he could get out of his contract here after the 2027 year. That's only 2 years, right? Now, a lot of us, they went to the Super Bowl and we're like, we're going to win playoff games every year. It's going to be awesome. Don't look now. Haven't made the playoffs past 3 years, right? That's not how Joe Burrow rolls. That's not the standard that he wanted to have here in this organization, right? And if these next 2 years they miss the playoffs again, I think you got to start talking about the possibility of him potentially not being here, which is crazy. Which is crazy to say out loud, but I think that is, when you talk about being concerned after his comments after the press conference, that's where my mind goes. My mind goes to, oh my goodness, he might try to get out. That's where the concern lies. I don't have an issue with him having some perspective, right? It's a tough year for him. This is his second game back. Crazy game. Should have won. But at the end of the day, the record in which they have, that isn't really directly tied to Joe Burrow, right? Because he hasn't played so many of these games this year. But when you start to see that from Joe, waving the white flag a little bit, having perspective, that's how the cookie crumbles, you get a little bit concerned. Because this whole thing, right, everybody bangs on Zach Taylor and Duke Tobin, and look, they deserve a lot of it, and rightfully so. If you remove Joe Burrow from this equation, I've got no faith that this franchise will ever have success. And maybe that's me being a little extreme, a little bit dramatic. That's just the reality of the situation. So these next 2 years, I don't want to look too far ahead now. It's, obviously several games left. Playing Baltimore this week. It's only December 9th. But these next 2 years are huge for Cincinnati, because you have to show, if you're an organization, that you can put a competent product out on the field around Joe Burrow, right? That you can put a winning product on the field, because he's been Superman. He was Superman for the most part in the Buffalo game, and he was Superman throughout all of last year as well, and it's resulting in staying home and missing the playoffs. He's looking around at some of these other teams, these other locations that maybe don't have an elite quarterback, and he's like, well, every team besides Kansas City and Buffalo and Baltimore and the Chargers would want me to be their quarterback. So the market for Joe Burrow, if he wanted to try to get out of here, everybody basically would have interest in his services. And he's looking at some of these other rosters across the league, and he's like, oh, I could win there, no problem. I could win here, no problem. That's just my concern. I'm not suggesting he's going to do that. I'm not suggesting he's going to bail on this organization. But when you talk about getting concerned with Joe Burrow by his tone at a press conference, I'm not worried about how it's going to affect him and his play over the course of the next few games. I'm worried about just the idea of him wanting to leave. That's just something that creeps into my mind personally. So he has some perspective. He's been hurt a million times. Cut him some slack. That's kind of my take. But I always just worry a little bit because if they miss the playoffs again next year, I mean, when you're wasting a talent like Joe Burrow, the fact that he's played at the level that he has had since the Super Bowl year, and obviously you went to the conference championship in 22, but haven't been able to get back to the playoffs since, is not good. And, in fact, it's a complete disaster, to be completely honest with you. And hopefully that's not something that we have to have serious conversations about going forward. But that's just kind of my thoughts overall in the press conference. Don't have issue with him having some perspective. Don't have issue with him being honest. I just hope that, he's still committed to this team for the long term, despite the fact that, the organization isn't really helping him out a ton as far as, the pieces around him and the production on the football field. All right, NFL Power Rankings. We do it every Tuesday here at the show, 10-1. Not tons of changes at the top. As the Patriots in play, the Rams had a big-time win, so did the Packers as well, but we'll get to them in a second. There is a team that is on the outside looking in that most people that do this would still have the Chicago Bears inside their top 10, but I personally do not. I'm not ready to buy in on the Chicago Bears. I am totally bought in on Ben Johnson. I think he's unbelievable. I think when you talk about Coach of the Year, you're talking about Ben Johnson, you're talking about Mike Vrabel, and you should be also talking about Kyle Shanahan there as well. No issues with Ben Johnson. I believe in him. And Caleb Williams, he settled in a little bit in the second half against Green Bay. When he's on the move, the athleticism that he shows, it is really, really good. But he misses too many layups and he misses too many easy shots from within the pocket. There was an opportunity for him to tie the game late against Green Bay, and he missed on a throw, right? I don't want my quarterback completing 50% of his passes. He's kind of floating in that 50-50 range, and that, to me, is not close to being good enough. So I've got them on the outside looking him in here in the top 10. Before the Green Bay game, they were the number 1 overall seed in a really, really good NFC. Vegas tried to tell you that this is borderline fraudulent here. Packers were 6.5-point favorites in that game. It was the best bet of the weekend, and we certainly executed there on that. So I've got the Bears on the outside looking in. They're going to be a playoff team. Is there a world where they completely fall from grace and miss the playoffs? Yes, I wouldn't bet on that. I would say they're definitely still a playoff team here at this point. Kind of feel like a one-and-done playoff team, though, in my opinion. But Ben Johnson deserves a lot of credit for what he's done. At number 10, the Jacksonville Jaguars. I can't believe I'm saying that out loud. We kind of flirted with having them in the top 10 early in the year, and then we pivoted off that pretty quickly, and it's like, the Jaguars are still the Jaguars. They're winning games left and right here, and people are talking about, as I mentioned, Vrabel and Ben Johnson. Liam Cohen appears to be a big-time hire for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He was great in Tampa with Baker, right? He made Will Levis look like a competent player at UK there as well and has really skyrocketed. He gets that job. He was going to take the job, and the GM was still in place, Trent Baalke, who I don't know how the Jaguars still had him employed after moving on from Peterson. And then they realized that, nobody wants this job if we still have Baalke in place. They moved off Baalke, and then ultimately Liam Cohen ends up getting the job. And then he has the cringy press conference where it's like, what is this dude doing? Well, he knows offensive football, and he knows how to lead a football team as well. They're winning games, and they're kind of winning games in spite of Trevor Lawrence. And I've been a huge Trevor Lawrence guy since his days at Cartersville High School years ago. And I thought he was going to be a can't-miss guy. He's getting paid a ton of money, and the level of play hasn't really lived up to that. I still kind of believe in him in a big-time game, playing well in the postseason, but he misses. He's a little bit too inaccurate, and he makes some bad decisions. But they're winning games left and right with him. Beat the crud out of the Indianapolis Colts. Daniel Jones obviously went down in that football game, and the Texans are certainly coming in that division as well. But I think the Jaguars deserve to be in the top 10, and I'm not going to say they're a dangerous team here at this point, but they're a team that knows how to win football games. They deserve credit for that, and I've got them at the 10 spot. 9, Detroit. Look, is Detroit the same team they were the past couple of years? No. 1 overall seed last year, not nearly at that level here this year. You don't want to play Detroit in the playoffs, though. And it looks like my money would be on them getting into the playoffs here at this point. It was a huge game on Thursday. I had to have it against the Dallas Cowboys. They're really good at home. They're going to continue to be really good at home, and they're going to have to go on the road in the playoffs this year, so I have my questions with that. But they've got all kinds of speed along that offense. Jahmyr Gibbs is one of the best players in the National Football League, right? Amon-Ra St. Brown had the ankle injury. Most people weren't even expecting him to play on a short week. He goes out there, guts through it, is a huge piece and a component to that victory on Thursday against the Dallas Cowboys. Deserves a lot of credit for gutting through that. You know, we all sit here on the show and talk about Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson and Puka Nacua. Amon-Ra St. Brown is that guy, and he certainly belongs, when you're talking about great wide receivers in this league, he belongs near the top of that list. And also Jamison Williams, he has some maturity issues, but he is electric out there on the football field. And you couple his speed with the speed of Jahmyr Gibbs and just the reliability of a guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown, that's a really, really good offense, especially when you're indoors and Jared Goff doesn't have to deal with freezing temperatures. He can go out there and play well. Dan Campbell taking over play calling for Johnny Morton, getting a little bit better. I mean, they scored 40-plus points, albeit against a bad Cowboy defense, but they deserve a lot of credit for that performance. I wouldn't want to play the Detroit Lions. They're going to get into some shootouts. They got some issues there defensively, but Brian Branch, well, he did get hurt in the Cowboy game, so that's an injury to monitor. He's a really good player, kind of a nickel for them on the back end. And then Aiden Hutchinson. They've got issues along their defense, but they have a really good pass rusher. And if you remember, with the Cincinnati Bengals, when they had weak defenses, they always had that threat of Trey Hendrickson, and that kind of, you could lean on that a little bit. And the Lions certainly do. He's a great player, and I've got the Lions here in the top 10. Also, Buffalo. Unfortunate. Last week I had them at 8. They stay right here at the 8 spot. Of course, they beat the Cincinnati Bengals 39-34. I'm just watching that game. It's just so frustrating for the Cincinnati Bengals because it's like they're kind of the better team. Like, I trust the Bengals more on offense than I do with the Bills, despite the fact that they have Josh Allen. But he deserves a ton of credit coming back in the game. I was very early with Patrick Mahomes. You saw that he was going to be an all-time great, and I was all over that early. I didn't expect it out of Texas Tech, but once he got the starting job and he played like 2 games, it was like, oh, he's the real deal. I think right now, when you evaluate the quarterback position, like Allen and Burrow are on a different tier than Mahomes right now. That's just kind of the reality of the situation. And I think we saw the 2 best quarterbacks in the National Football League playing in this game. And Joe Burrow was well on his way to outdoing Josh Allen, and then the 2 costly interceptions there in the fourth quarter ruin it. But this kind of feels like the year for Buffalo. And we've said that a couple of times, right? But you look at the state of the AFC. Like, if not now, when? If you're Buffalo, right? Because they got issues on their defense. They don't have a wide receiver besides Shakira that they really can count on. But you're going to be playing young quarterbacks. Drake May, Bo Nix, not going to have to deal with Mahomes in the playoffs this year. So I've got him at 8. But if you're a team in the AFC going to the playoffs, that kind of feels like the team to beat here at this point. They're very vulnerable, as we saw. Burrow and company were playing great football against them for most of the football game, but the Buffalo still belongs in the top 10. They're a dangerous team. Kind of feels like their year a little bit. Not necessarily because of the caliber of football they're playing, but just on what's going on around them. Not going to have to deal with Burrow in the playoffs. Not going to have to deal with Mahomes in the playoffs. Might not even have to deal with Lamar Jackson in the playoffs either. Things are kind of going in their favor right now. 7, the Niners. Last week I had them at 6. They didn't play. Again, Ben Johnson and Vrabel getting all the Coach of the Year love, rightfully so. But what Shanahan has done this year is tremendous. I think he's, top 3 coach in the league with McVay and Andy Reid, to be completely honest with you. I think he's awesome. What he does in the run game is tremendous. They lean on Christian McCaffrey. McCaffrey's been able to stay healthy, but nobody else on their team has. And they've got backups all over the place on defense. Saleh deserves a lot of credit for that. But, winning with Mac Jones, who proved he should be a starter in the NFL here at this point. But he's just done a great job navigating the mess that is the Brandon Ayuk situation. Pearsall's been in and out of the lineup as well. Kittle's been in and out of the lineup. So to win like they are in that division, they deserve a lot of credit. I would not want to play the Niners in the postseason. Have them at 7. 6, we've been on this for a while. The Houston Texans, they had the dreadful start to the year. I picked them to win the division going in, and just a dreadful start to the season, and we kind of got back on their bandwagon a couple of weeks ago. It was the final game, I believe, or maybe the second to last game Davis Mills was starting, and I was like, if they win this game, they're going to have a chance here with Stroud coming back here in the relatively near future. that defense is unbelievable. I don't know if you watched any of the game against the Chiefs on Sunday night. The Chiefs got a laundry list of issues that they got to figure out. Kind of feel like they need to retool a little bit, particularly on the offensive side. But that defense is the real deal. When you make a gutsy move like that to trade up and go get a guy like Will Anderson, you better not miss. And let me tell you, the Houston Texans did not miss. He's one of the best players in the National Football League. He's one of my favorite players in the National Football League to watch. Stingley on the back end locks down whatever receiver he's up against. So this Texans team's the real deal. And they've got issues offensively, but with Stroud back, that certainly helps. He made some nice plays out of the pocket with them. Collins there is a really nice receiver. Schultz had a couple of, has had some drops in the past, but he's a really reliable tight end as well. With that defense, I don't want to play Houston in the playoffs, and I would not be surprised at all if they ended up taking that division, as the Colts are just in a tailspin here at this point. Their quarterback gets hurt. They give up 2 first-round picks for a corner. He gets hurt as well, and that just turned into a complete mess for Indianapolis. But Jacksonville, Houston, here they come. Have them at 6. 5, Denver. Last week I had them at 4. They beat the Raiders by 1 score. I don't know. I mean, they kind of have a Minnesota Viking feel to them from last year. Different in the sense that Denver obviously is predicated on their defense, but they're just winning all these games, and you're like, I don't know if you're going to be able to do this in the postseason. I don't think it would shock anybody if they were 1 and done in the playoffs. They're not really blowing many teams out. They get in these close games. They don't really get things into gear until the second half. That certainly is concerning, I think. If you are a Denver Bronco fan, I think the world of Sean Payton. Bo Nix has been better of late, but they very well could be the 1 seed in the AFC, and that would kind of feel like, remember when the Titans were the 1 seed and the Bengals beat them, and it was like, yeah, congrats, you had a heck of a year, but like you don't feel like the 1 seed. If that ends up being Denver, you kind of have that same mindset, but they win games. Credit to them. Have them at 5. 4, Seattle. Last week I had them at 5, and they just blew the doors off the Atlanta Falcons 37-9. Atlanta's a mess, but they can play defense. They've got some real good pieces there defensively. James Pierce is having a heck of a rookie year. Could be a Cincinnati Bengal. Bengals opted not to take him, of course, and take Shamar Stewart. But they got a backup quarterback, with Cousins. Penix, they took him at 8 overall. I don't know if that's going to work out. So the Falcons have all types of issues, but to dominate the game in which they did against a solid defense, score 37 points, they can run it. JSN is, talk about, Chase and Higgins and Nakua and putting St. Brown up in that category. JSN starting to work his way up that list there as well. He's tremendous. Hard for me to get that multi-interception performance from Sam Darnold out of my head against the Los Angeles Rams, right? That's going to be just lingering in there as they kind of make their way towards the postseason, but a lot of belief in McDonald as a coach. It's a really good defense, have some skilled guys. They can run the ball. Sam Darnold's been great this year, but do you trust him in the playoffs? Probably not, but good enough to still be at number 4. And then these top 3 teams, I think, have kind of separated themselves, certainly from the pack. No pun intended, but I have the pack at number 3. Picked them to go to the Super Bowl. I'm starting to gain a little bit more confidence as the weeks go on with that. They were 6.5-point favorites at home against the Bears. Ended up only being a 7-point game, but I thought they really controlled that game, dictated the outcome of that game. We sit here and we talk about MVPs and Matthew Stafford, who kind of had the bad game against Carolina and then has a really good game against Arizona. We'll talk about the Rams in a second. Drake May, of course, talk about the Patriots in a second. He's playing really well. Let's give Jordan Love some MVP love, right? He's having a heck of a year, right? Kind of a quiet heck of a year. Remember, a few weeks ago, people were talking about Matt LaFleur getting fired, which was just laughable, to be completely honest with you. But Jordan Love, he can make all the throws. He's tough, right? He can play in the cold, which obviously you have to do in Green Bay and in the playoffs if you want to have success there as well. Packers are starting to come together here, starting to get a little bit healthier as well. Micah Parsons, they have that closer, and it's not just him on defense. They got dudes at all 3 levels. Halfley's doing a great job down and up. I don't want to play the Green Bay Packers at all. I've got them at number 3 here as they're putting together a really nice year. 2, Rams. Last week I had them at 2, beat the crud out of the Cardinals. Sometimes you got to go across country and play in an early window game as a West Coast team, and you have some turnovers. It rains, and it's just the pieces don't come together. They lost to the Panthers a couple of weeks ago, and we sat here and said, yeah, we're not moving them off the 2. We're not panicking at all here. And they just dominated the Cardinals. The Cardinals are a mess. They got to probably move off their coach, figure out what they're going to do at the quarterback position there as well. But to dominate the game in which the Rams did says a lot. 45 points. The defense is really good. Stafford, feels like the MVP, I would say, here at this point. And McVay coaching them, young, athletic on defense. Have them at 2, and didn't really think twice about it. And had the Patriots at 1. Been on this for a long time. Now, they didn't play last week. Certainly in the Bengal game, they didn't look like the best team in the National Football League in that one. But, they've had a weak schedule. They're taking advantage of that. I love the continuity of the group. Kind of feels like an old school Patriot team in the sense of they have some journeymen that are just kind of coming together and playing football and tough physical style, some wily veterans there on defense that are playing well. They deserve a lot of credit for the Diggs move this offseason. I remember they paid him. We were all like, what in the world are you doing paying Stephon Diggs? But it has clearly worked out for them. They deserve some credit there. Drake May's playing at a high level, and Henderson out of Ohio State took him a second to really get going and get some opportunities, but he's kind of a firecracker. I'm not going to say Jahmyr Gibbs, but, when the ball's in his hands, usually electric things are transpiring, and that's really added a nice element to what they're doing. So I've got the Patriots at 1. We've been on that for a long time, and we'll see if they can keep that good momentum rolling. All right, as always, get in the comments section and give some feedback there. That video will go out later today, our power rankings, so very interested to what you guys have to say as far as my power rankings go here this week. We do it every Tuesday and certainly love breaking that down. As always, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. YouTube.com/ChatterboxSports. We are approaching, hopefully by the next time I look, we have 21,000 subscribers, but I think we're like within 20 of making that happen. Help us out. We're here live on the channel each and every weekday. And off the bench, 10 to 11, then me solo, 11 to 12, working on some good guests the rest of this week as well. So help us out, like the stream, and certainly subscribe as well. Heisman finalists, that will be announced Saturday in New York. It's kind of become a quarterback award a little bit. Devontae Smith, of course, won it a couple of years ago, very deserving, out of Alabama. But I still love the Heisman. I still love the pageantry of it. To me, it means a lot to win the Heisman Trophy. And again, it's kind of shifted to a quarterback award, but it's a big deal for me. I love watching the presentation, getting the speech, getting all the previous winners together, the Nissan Heisman House, right? I've always really enjoyed the Heisman Trophy, and it kind of gets you ready for postseason football at the collegiate level. 4 finalists: Jeremiah Love, heck of a year out of Notre Dame. He would kind of hit the Heisman pose after scoring, which I've always had an issue with that when guys do that. And it's like, you're not going to win the Heisman. You might be in New York. Congrats on a heck of a year, but stop. Saw Pavia doing it there as well. But I think the world of Jeremiah Love. He is so athletic. If you remember in the championship game throughout the playoffs last year for Notre Dame, he was really banged up and not close to 100%. I think if he's fully healthy, maybe that game against Ohio State looks a little bit different. Not saying Notre Dame wins, but I think it does look a little bit different in that football game. He's going to be a first-round pick, and he's one of those guys, and we talk about him with like Caleb Downs as well, where it's like, that guy's going to be good in the NFL. And Jeremiah Love's going to be a good NFL running back. I feel really confident about that. He should win the Doak Campbell Award for the best running back in the country, but he's not going to win the Heisman Trophy, but has had a heck of a year, deserves a lot of credit for that. It's my belief that Notre Dame got snubbed here in the college football playoff. I get it went to the tiebreaker with head-to-head. Miami, of course, beat Notre Dame. Let's not act like that was recent, though. That happened all the way back in week 1 when C.J. Carr is making his first start and Carson Beck is making his first start with Miami. I thought it was just bad by the committee that they don't put the head-to-head into play until Selection Sunday is when they wait to do that, because Notre Dame had been ranked above Miami the whole time they were putting out college football playoff rankings. So I got an issue with that. I also think Notre Dame's just flat out the better team, but regardless, I digress. Worthy Heisman finalist, Jeremiah Love. Deserves a lot of credit for that. Next up, Diego Pavia out of Vanderbilt. It's interesting. He's had a heck of a career. He's bounced around, journeyman. He's just a tough dude. Say what you want about Diego Pavia. I'm not a Diego Pavia fan necessarily, but I certainly respect what he's been able to do. And first 10-win season for Vandy is huge. They were just able to get the number 1 quarterback in the class, which is, unthinkable that Vandy would be able to do that. And, Clark Lee deserves a lot of credit for what he's doing there. But this movement, this Vanderbilt movement, has been spearheaded by Diego Pavia. He absolutely belongs in New York. And this is a guy that takes massive shots as well throughout the duration of a football game. Like, he's not this drop back passer, right? They run it with Pavia, and he takes big time hits, and he gets up each and every time, and that toughness kind of reverberates throughout the rest of his team. And I think it's unfortunate that Vandy doesn't have an opportunity to play in this playoff. I think they absolutely deserve to play in the playoff. I mean, they capped off their season going into Neyland and winning and dominating that game against Tennessee, obviously an in-state rival. And it's unfortunate for them that they don't have an opportunity to play for a national title. But I think Clark Lee, I mean, he signed that extension. He's going to be sticking around here. They just got a big-time recruit in Jared Curtis, who, you know, he's a high school kid. We'll see what he can do. But I think Vandy football certainly trending up, and Diego Pavia deserves a lot of credit for that. You know, I thought for a second watching the Big Ten title game and saying obviously was struggling, and, you know, Mendoza really, you know, early on wasn't doing anything crazy. And I thought there was a world where I was like, well, if both these quarterbacks have a stinker of a performance in this Big Ten championship game, you might be in a position where Diego Pavia steals the Heisman. Don't think that ended up happening, as Mendoza made some huge plays down the stretch. But Pavia has had a heck of a season. I don't know. Is he trying to get another year of eligibility next year? That certainly would be funny. I saw there was rumors about that. I don't know how true that is, but he's got to be my age or approaching it here at this point. But deserves a lot of credit. Certainly belongs to New York. Julian Sayin, Ohio State quarterback. You know, first year as a starter. He's a young kid. Big-time recruit, 5-star recruit, originally committed to Alabama. You know, there was quote-unquote competition between him and Lincoln Kienholz. And yeah, I think there was actually some truth to that. Originally, I was like, Ryan just wants to keep his backup quarterback. But I think there kind of was a bit of a competition. Sayin wins it. Hasn't looked back ever since. Has been sensational in each and every game that they've played until the Big Ten championship game, where he actually had to go out there and play quarterback. He had to take some hits. He had to read out a defense, and he was not able to do it. It kind of fell flat on his face a little bit. And that's the first time he's really had to face adversity as a college quarterback here. He's going to respond, right? I expect him to play really, really well throughout the course of the playoff. Wouldn't surprise me at all if Ohio State repeated as national champions, and my money would be on him winning this award next year. Had an opportunity to win it this year with a good performance against Indiana. That didn't happen. They lose the game, so he's not going to win it. But he's a great player, and I expect him to bounce back in the college football playoff. And then lastly, Fernando Mendoza. He's your Heisman winner. He's going to win the award. You know, he spent several years at Cal, and people that don't watch college football don't know anything about Mendoza or are watching him for the first time since Indiana. They see his press or his post-game interview and are making fun of him. Look, he was emotional. It was a huge win, and that's just who he is. And he was staying true to himself, and I can respect a guy that's out there not trying to be somebody he's not, just staying true to himself. He was fired up. And for his team, he was fired up for the university, and that's a big deal, right? It's not like they beat Iowa to win the Big Ten championship. They beat Ohio State. They beat the kings of college football, and he made some big-time throws in the process. So I would encourage everybody that just saw that to, you know, look at some other clips. You know, is he a little bit quirky? Sure, you can say that, but he clearly is a tremendous leader. Clearly his teammates love him. Clearly his head coach loves him. Clearly his university loves him as well, and he deserves a lot of credit for that. And also, go back to his time at Cal, right? I mean, he had a very similar press conference after they beat Stanford to go to 6-6 and secure a bowl bid. He had, if you go back and watch it, it was very similar to how he acted after winning the Big Ten championship. So this is a guy that loves football. He loves his teammates. He loves competing. His story's great. So would encourage everybody to check that out a little bit if you just kind of saw the post game. But look, I'll be honest, I saw it and I was like, what are we doing here? You know, it's not the national title. It's the Big Ten championship. It might feel like it because you beat Ohio State, but it's not the national title. But regardless, I wasn't all the way in on Fernando Mendoza. I'm still not all the way in on Fernando Mendoza. But that performance, again, if you're just looking at the stat sheet of the game against Indiana, you're like, what are you talking about? That's not great. Watch the game. The toughness that he shows. Caden Curry tries to take his head off. Clean hit, by the way. First play of the game. He's down on the field. Everybody's like, oh, my goodness, he's going to be out for the game. His brother comes in, comes back a couple of plays later, and ultimately leads his team to victory. And some big-time throws that he made. Tight coverage from Ohio State. Pass rush. Close to getting home. Hanging in there and just throwing some dimes across the football field against that defense on that stage. He's absolutely your Heisman Trophy winner. We can have the conversation of what to do as an NFL prospect in the future, but a heck of a year for Mendoza. Great story, and what him and Cignetti have done is truly unbelievable. They're the 1 seed, and we'll see if they can finish it off. Going to obviously have to win 3 more games to be national champions. Wouldn't bet on that happening, but certainly wouldn't surprise me at all if that was the case. Philadelphia, they played they played the Chargers last night, and that was an interesting game because you go in there and you're like, you think Philly's going to win that game, and then I'm like, actually I'm going to take the Chargers to win, and it's like you don't really have any confidence doing it, but you just feel like that's the thing to do, and obviously it worked out. Just kind of a messy game. Neither team valuing the football at all. We had interceptions all over the place, fumbles all over the place. There was the double fumble, the fumble-rooski type of play where, Hurts throws the pick, and then the guy that picks it off, he fumbles, Hurts gets it back, then he fumbles again, and then ultimately the Chargers recover it. That's the worst game I've ever seen Jalen Hurts play, and I don't know why Philadelphia was kind of stubborn with their approach. I understand they've struggled to run the ball this year, but it's almost like they want to convince everybody. You kind of see Sean Payton do this a little bit in Denver, convince everybody that, oh, no, our quarterback can throw the ball. He's really good at that. Look, I think the world of Jalen Hurts. I would love to have, if the Bengals, of course, didn't have Joe Burrow, I would love to have Jalen Hurts as your franchise guy, right? The leadership that he has, he's his best in the biggest moments, the toughness, the poise, leadership at the podium. It's all incredible, right? He had a really bad game, and he's had, frankly, a bad year. But this is a guy that just went off in the Super Bowl and beat a dynasty, arguably ended a dynasty in Kansas City, right? So if you're Philadelphia getting upset with Jalen Hurts, pump the brakes a little bit there. But I don't understand why you're not trying to lean on your run game a little bit more. They have issues along their offensive line. Landon Dickerson went out with injury, right? They've been without, their starting tackle, of course, Lane Johnson, right? That's been an issue for them. They've struggled at the center position, too, had some injuries there. Juergens, it felt like he was going to be that replacement for Jason Kelce, and then he's been hurt in and out of the lineup. So they've got some issues there along their offensive line. The tush-push doesn't really work as well as we're used to seeing for Philadelphia. But I would have tried to run the ball a little bit more, especially with the way Hurts was playing and with a banged-up Justin Herbert in that game. So I kind of questioned the decision-making there. Patullo, the offense coordinator for Philly, is getting all kinds of flack in that city. Philadelphia's a very loud, boisterous city. They expect great things. And, look, they've got a lot of guys on that team that are making a ton of money. Quarterback making a ton of money. A.J. Brown, who had some key drops in the game, by the way, making a ton of money. Smitty, Devontae Smith, he's on a deal, right? Barkley making a ton of money as well. So the expectation's high in Philadelphia, as it should be. But I would have tried to lean into the run game a little bit more, especially when it was obvious that Hurts wasn't having his best game throwing the football. And, look, Jalen Hurts, if you just want to be a pocket guy, well, that's not what got you to this point. That's not what got you this contract. That's not what got you to 2 Super Bowls. Got to use your legs a little bit more. I don't know if he's hurt or they just want to protect him for long term. I'm not quite sure, but I would like to see them run the football a little bit more. But defensively, I think you got to feel pretty good if you're the Philadelphia Eagles. Forced a lot of field goals, only let the Chargers in the end zone once. Had to deal with some short fields there, too, with Hurts in the offense turning the football over. So it'll be interesting to see how they adjust here. I still think they have enough of a lead on Dallas to still win that division. But as I mentioned at the top of the show, it wouldn't surprise me at all. If you remember a couple of years ago with Philadelphia where they were winning all of these games early and then just went into a tailspin and then got blown out the first round of the playoffs, kind of feels like they're heading in that direction a little bit there as well. But that defense will give them a chance because they've got some guys all over the place making plays. From a Charger perspective, kind of feels like they could be one and done in the playoffs there as well. Herbert's a warrior. Herbert is an absolute warrior. I like Justin Herbert a lot. He's clearly a franchise guy. He has taken so much punishment since he's been a starting quarterback in the NFL. In Cincinnati, we talk about the hits that Burrow takes. I think, Herbert's kind of had it worse as far as some of the punishment that he's taken, if I'm being completely honest here. Playing with a broken left hand. He had surgery earlier in the week, or like literally 7 days before the game last night. He's out there playing. He's got a bloody elbow that just won't stop bleeding, and they're doing all types of things to his elbow on the sideline, trying to figure it out, and it just continues to bleed. And he didn't play his best, but he showed some incredible toughness. He got shellacked in that football game by Philadelphia. He's got backups along his offensive line. They've had issues staying healthy there. He had to use his legs a lot in this game. He's got to be seriously hurting in this game for the Chargers, but just, I don't know, with all the injuries they have along their offensive line, defense, okay. Certainly reaped the benefits of Philly just being completely incompetent offensively, but Minter's done a nice job. Hard for me to imagine them going on a playoff run, but certainly look like a playoff team here at this point. Kind of weird after the game. I was surprised that it happened with a guy like Justin Herbert. People are talking about this a lot here this morning. Laura Rutledge, tremendous, ESPN, host of NFL Live, does some sideline reporting stuff for Monday Night Football. She's incredible. She's just trying to do her job, ask him questions, right, after the game. And look, if you're a quarterback, that's part of it, right? You're getting paid a lot of money. You do an interview after a win, especially in a primetime game. And Herbert, I think, understands that. Be interesting to see if he comes out and apologizes. He didn't say anything mean or nasty. He was just like, hey, I'm trying to celebrate with my teammates. She was like, well, I mean, you have a few minutes here to talk to us, Justin. And ultimately he did, but kind of a uncharacteristic moment, I feel like, for a guy like Justin Herbert, who's such a, high-level individual, classy dude, and he just probably got caught up in the moment. His body was probably killing him. He's bleeding all down his elbow. His hand's broken. He's probably just an overtime game, emotional game, probably just wanted a second. Maybe just got caught up in the moment a little bit, but that was kind of interesting to see that from Herbert, because that was out of character, right? If Shedeur Sanders did that, we'd be like, oh, yeah, that's Shedeur. But for Justin Herbert, that seemed like something that was out of character. I wouldn't expect that to be something that happens again, and, does he need to apologize? I don't know about that, but, if you're an NFL quarterback in a primetime game and your team wins, you do the interview, right? That's part of it. That's part of the gig. I think he understands that. Just probably got caught up in the moments a little bit, if we're being completely honest. All right, couple of minutes. Won't do a full segment on the winter meetings, but do want to touch on Schwarber. Day one of the winter meetings yesterday, Tito spoke. I think he was talking to Przinski. They kind of were just rolling through, the team. It's going to look very similar to the team that we saw last year, right? He talked about kind of wishing he gave Ellie a day more so often here or there, as he rode Ellie like a horse, came out after the year, had an issue with his quad. Don't love to see that, right? I think some Reds fans were ticked off about it and mad at Tito for it, and I certainly understand that, wanting to protect the player. My takeaway was that, my respect for Ellie De La Cruz just skyrocketed, right? Because he was not playing good baseball. What did he bat after the break? Like 230, right? Not playing his best. Was getting drugged a little bit for his performance and all this. Oh, he can't hit a home run. Well, I guess his quad was partially torn, right? So maybe that ties into not being able to put the ball over the fence. The errors are going to continue to be an issue for him probably going forward. But just to be able to play through that, and there were moments there, where it looked like you were down and out, and then he continued to play. Ellie De La Cruz is a ball player. I respect the heck out of him for that, and I don't kill Tito necessarily for having him continue to play, but he talked about, this year probably going to give him a day more so here and there, and that certainly will be beneficial. Friedel, going to be back in center probably, and they like Noelvi and right. He showed some improvement, saved the season there at the end of that day game against Pittsburgh, right, with the robbery. It was tremendous. Said he's going to get some work in center. I think it's a good thing, right? The Reds basically felt like for all of last year, it's like, okay, Friedel's our center fielder, but when he's not out there, who's the backup? And I was like, all right, we'll throw Benson out there and see how that goes. But, getting Noelvi some reps out there probably wouldn't be the end of the world. I don't know exactly how it's going to transpire, but, I think that's a good thing. McLean, they're going to stick to him at second base, and Tito said, when you come off an injury like that, it kind of happens in baseball. And he's right. There's a history of this happening. A lot of Reds fans, myself included, very frustrated with McLean. Kind of felt like for a while there he was, an automatic out for this team, and a team that had a lot of outs. So not ideal to have your second baseman be an automatic out. He expects him to bounce back. He kind of rode him there at the top of the lineup for so long. Tito said he was kind of stubborn with him, which obviously he was. He's supposed to be a really good player. He's had really good moments in Major League Baseball, and hopefully he can get back to that. It's hard to imagine the Reds are going to be able to overcome him him being that bad again, right? I don't think they can be a playoff team if he's going to be that bad again. And he's going to get a lot of time. He's going to play a lot, and hopefully he can bounce back, kind of being a year removed from the injury, and hopefully has a healthy spring training and kind of can go from there. Steer talked about it. Look, I'm a big Spencer Steer guy. I like Spencer Steer a lot. I just think he's a ball player. I think he's a competitor. I think he's a gutsy dude. He does whatever they ask him. First base, right, left, DH, second base even, third base even. So he can play everywhere. I respect the heck out of that. Remember, he was playing hurt early, and for the first 3-4 weeks, he didn't do anything literally for the team, and then he was able to settle in and be solid. He's got to be a little bit better, but I thought he was solid has the clutch gene, which I don't know who else on the team really has that, right? You hope Ellie can develop that, but Steer certainly has it, and Tito loves Steer. It'll just be interesting to see what his role is going to be, right? Because you're going to bring in somebody. There's going to be a free agent that is brought in to start. We all hope it's Schwarber at the DH spot, but there's going to be some dominoes that fall because of that, right? Sal Stewart, what's he going to do? He's going to be on the team. He's going to be playing a lot. Is it first base? Is it DH? Is it second? Is it third, right? Different options there for Sal Stewart. I think they're trying to figure out what they're going to do in the left right now. Tito talked about that, whether that option is somebody within their system right now or a potential free agent out there as well. But that's kind of the position where I was like, what are you going to do at left field? Friedel in center, Marte in right. What are you going to do with left field? Is it going to be Steer out there? Steer going to be at first? Are you going to sign a first baseman? Sal going to play first? Lots of questions there with that. Key Bryan, Gold Glover, he'll be at third. Ellie will be at short again. And your catchers are back, Trevino and Stevenson, who I thought they did a really nice job last year, to be completely honest with you. And then, you'll have some changes that are made rotation-wise, and the bullpen certainly needs to be reworked. We talked about it last week. Emilio Pagan is back, and don't have an issue with that. I'm not over the moon excited about it, but he will be back. Now the question, of course, becomes Kyle Schwarber. He didn't really talk too much about it. Basically, it was like, a heck of a player. Respect the heck out of him. Heard he's a great kid, but I'm kind of, step away here and let him go through that whole process. It's been reported that the Pirates offered him a big-time contract. If they land Schwarber, it will be the biggest free agent contract in the history of this franchise. I think we all understand that. And we'll see. Does he take that hometown discount? Does he not? I think people in Philadelphia are a little bit worried, right? The Philadelphia Inquirer talked about there's a chance that Philly gives him the most money and that he wants to re-sign with the Phillies and ultimately ends up a Cincinnati Red. That would be very exciting, certainly here in the city. People laughed at me when I had this take, but I understand they have other holes on their team. I understand one guy isn't going to fix all of your problems. I'm just saying, if you get Kyle Schwarber, sign me up. I'm in. I'll rock with whatever the heck you got to do throughout your bullpen, throughout the rest of your rotation, or if you don't add another bat, I'm okay with that, right? That doesn't mean they're going to win the World Series. Doesn't mean they're going to win the division, but sign me up. I'll take that gamble, and I think a lot of other Reds fans would take that gamble as well. That's something that we're going to continue to monitor. Part of me thinks this could get done soon, and by done, I don't mean him signing with the Reds, but just him figuring out who his team is going to be. And I think a lot of dominoes are going to fall after that as it relates to Kyle Schwarber when you take a look at the rest of Major League Baseball. So certainly an exciting time. It feels like the Reds have a real shot here. I would say definitely less than 50% right now, but when have the Reds ever been in consideration for a guy like this? Never. Right. And granted, if he wasn't from the area, they wouldn't be in consideration. But, this is a huge opportunity for Cincinnati. And, a huge opportunity for us here at Chatterbox. Nobody covers, obviously, the Reds like we do. Nick Kirby, Trace Fowler, Craig Sandlin, Mike Hart, the whole team. But that would help us out a lot if Kyle Schwarber became a Cincinnati Red. Fingers crossed as it relates to that. All right. Appreciate everyone, as always, for hanging out with us here at the show. And, I do want to remind everybody about the T-shirt sale. Last day for the T-shirt sale is today. Chatterboxsports.com/store. Go get your T-shirts. Chatterbox Reds, Chatterbox Bengals, Chatterbox Bearcats. 2 shirts, $40. Use the code DOUBLE, DOUBLE. Last day for the sale. Go get them. Chatterboxsports.com/store. And, we'll see. Maybe we'll get some more new T-shirts up there if the numbers, all the math worked out there. But 100% of the proceeds go towards your favorite Chatterbox Sports creators. Get you some swag. I know it's not Black Friday anymore, but it's technically a Black Friday deal, right? Holiday season, yourself, your family, go from there and certainly help us out, and we would greatly appreciate it. Get yourself some Chatterbox Sports swag. Chatterboxsports.com/store. Appreciate everybody, as always, for hanging out with us here on a Tuesday. We appreciate you, and we will be back live here at 10 o'clock with Off the Bench and 11 o'clock after that tomorrow. Looking forward to it. Until then, take care, everybody.